Segment 1. Scraping stranger sits, barely past sunrise in Rome, but the bath complex is already murmuring with life. Shadows from the colonnade stretch across the paving stones as a pale warmth begins to seep into the air. But for you, a bath attendant or balneatar, the day has been in motion, since long before the first patrician even stirred under his silk coverlet. Your tunic clings with yesterday's sweat, and your hands are stiff with residue from oils, skin, and steam. In this profession, softness is not a luxury you're afforded. Not in your fingers, not in your spine, and certainly not in your attitude, because your first task of the day, scraping people, naked people, groggy people, sometimes drunk people, with a curved piece of metal called the strigil is your sword, your brush, and your broom, all in one. It's about the length of your forearm, gently curved and usually made of bronze. You dip it in water, if you're lucky, clean water, and begin the work of removing yesterday's filth from someone else's body. The goal is to exfoliate and cleanse, but also to satisfy the customer. No scratching too hard, no slacking off either. You must strike that sweet spot where discomfort becomes pure, and they come in droves. By mid-morning, the line outside the bathhouse resembles the queue to a gladiator match. Not in terms of violence, but volume. Rich merchants, muscle-headedly chubby poets and gossiping matrons, they all come for the same reason, not just to bathe, but to be seen bathing. The baths are more public than the forum and more social than the circus. They are Rome's watering hole in every sense. You don't get to be one of them though. Your role is backstage. You're the one crouching beside steaming pools, fetching oil jars, and scraping grime off someone's back while pretending not to notice the mole in the shape of a grape cluster just above their hip. You're invisible until you mess up. Then suddenly, you're very, very visible. Some clients like to chat while you scrape. Others remain silent, letting the gurgle of fountains and the slap of sandals on whetstone fill the space. The rich ones never meet your eye. They speak about you like you're an animated mop. Tell them not to press so hard. I have a symposium tonight. You nod without being acknowledged. You are fluent in that kind of Roman. Your fellow attendants are no better off than you. Some are former slaves, others are still enslaved. A few are freeborn but desperate for work. You all share the same tools, the same coarse linen shifts, and the same stiff-backed stools that barely cushion your spine while you kneel beside a sweating banker who insists on lemon oil, imported no less, for his morning cleanse. And then there's the noise. Oh, the noise. You might imagine a Roman bath as a serene sanctuary. But no, the thermi are an echo chamber of human presence. Groans from the massage tables, clinks of clay, oil flasks, the whir of water, the sudden yelp from someone who touched a marble slab that est your heart from yesterday, est your heart from yesterday. It's a soundscape of luxury for them and a clamor of labor for you. Then come the athletes. Gods help you when the gymnasium crowd stumbles in. Their skin is caked in dust and sweat, their calves wrapped in dirt-stained linen, and their energy somehow is still boundless. These men do not walk. They swagger, and they want the full treatment. Oil, scrape, rinse, repeat, every muscle glistening, like a bronze statue in the Capitoline Museum. They treat you like part of the floor plan, a sponge with a name. Hey Strigilis, my shoulders, one calls out. He doesn't use your name, just the Latin word for the tool you're holding. You don't correct him, you can't afford to, so you work. You kneel, you scrape the day melts around you in steam and commands. Your hands grow raw by noon, not from labor, you're used to that, but from the oils. They're not perfumed delicacies like modern lavender bath salts. These are thick, sticky mixtures made from olive oil, ash, and sometimes animal fat. You dip your fingers into jars with ingredients that would make a goat wince and slather them across unfamiliar skin. There is no part of the human body you haven't seen. You no longer flinch at scars or odd birthmarks, or that one old man with a constellation of warts on his inner thigh. What once shocked you now simply registers as a new obstacle to navigate with your strigil. There are moments of peace, brief ones. Sometimes a regular will greet you kindly, maybe ask about your mother, or bring you a crust of bread from the market. These people are rare and valuable, because in a place as hierarchical as Rome, a single friendly citizen with political ties can mean the difference between staying in this marble maze for years, or maybe, just maybe, earning a job at a smaller balnea with less foot traffic and more dignified clients. But those thoughts are fleeting. Reality returns with the next shout for assistance. the next jar of oil to be refilled, the next awkward cough as you approach yet another stranger, sweaty limbs with a curved metal scraper. You learned long ago not to think too hard about the intimacy of it all. You are hands. You are motion. You are presence without identity. There's a strange peace in that detachment, even as you labor deep into the afternoon. The sunlight slants differently now. The crowd has shifted. The gossip has changed. You've heard snippets about senators, about the latest war in Dacia, about a shipment of figs that spoiled in the harbor. You store it all away without realizing it. The bath attendant becomes a living sponge, absorbing not just oil and sweat, but the entire rhythm of the empire. By the time the lamps are being lit and the floors are being swept for the final rinse, your body feels like it belongs to someone else. Your knees ache, your arms throb, but you're still standing. Barely. You dump your final basin of used oil and rinse water down the drain carved into the mosaic floor. It snacks away into the sewers, taking with it a day's worth of Rome's dirt, and tomorrow it will all begin again. Because here, in the heart of the empire, glory is for the generals, gold is for the senators, and cleanliness, well, that's your job. There is something ancient about the ritual of bathing in Rome, not just in age, but in repetition. Every day feels the same. Every scrape, every oil jar, every whistle of steam. But beneath it, monotony lies a dance of etiquette, hierarchy, and calculated survival. Especially if you're a balneator. You start to know bodies better than faces. Broad shoulders mean military. Thin wrists and shaved legs. Probably an aspiring orator who wants to be seen as refined. The moment someone disrobes, you know what kind of day you're going to have. The scraping itself is rhythmic. You begin at the shoulders, drag the strigil across the back, down the arms, across the chest, careful around the ribs, and always avoid nicking the skin. If you draw blood, there's a good chance you'll hear about it from your supervisor. If not from the client himself, then through a withheld tip or a pointed glance from the overseer, who seems to materialize any time something goes wrong. You work in the appetiterium, the changing room, but often find yourself pulled toward the tepidarium, depending on where the demand is. You have to be versatile. One moment you're helping an old patrician into his sandals, the next you rechasing down a runaway oil flask that some child has kicked across the slick tiles. The steam makes it worse. The caldarium is a chamber of fog and flame. Heat pulses from the hypercaust beneath the floors. The Roman underfloor heating system, powered by fire and slaves, tending furnaces down below. You feel it in your souls. Sweat beads, instantly. The marble walls sweat with you. Breathing becomes effort. And through it all, you re-kneeling next to a man whose body hair clings to your forearm, because the oil won't come off cleanly. You've learned not to mind much, but you can't block out the smell. It's not bad. Exactly. Not like a sewer, but it's dense. The oil, the sweat, the faint temps of iron, the incense drifting in from some nearby lararium shrine to please the gods. And, occasionally, someone will bring perfume, not a spritz, a dump. The wealthy love to drown themselves in rose water or mud. It mingles with everything else until the air is too thick to think. And still, you scrape. You scrape until your knuckles are black from the soot on their skin. Because before people arrive at the baths, they go about their Roman lives. Construction, politics, vendoring, farming. You are removing more than dirt. You are peeling off their status, their routines, their power. For a moment, they are simply bodies in steam. But you are not allowed that same release. You cannot undress. You cannot enter the laconicum for a brief dry sweat. You cannot soak in the frigidarium to cool off. You serve, that is all. There's one man, though, who always tests the limits. Lucanus is a freedman now, but once a slave in the same domus where your cousin still works. Lucanus comes to the baths like he owns them, the chest puffed out, words loud, gestures broader than necessary. He always asks for you. Always. He tells jokes while you oil his calves, asks intrusive questions while you scrape his back. Tell me, do you prefer working here or shining sandals for the magistrate's wife? He'll say, cackling, even though he knows full well you've never worked outside the baths. Lucanus is harmless, relatively. But he represents something cruel. The illusion of mobility. He believes he's made it. He believes that being oiled instead of oiling others has transformed him, and he wants you to know he's above you now. You nod politely and scrape his grime into your towel. But later, when you step outside for a few stolen breaths, your thoughts wander. What would it take to be like Luke? Could you buy your way up? Find a patron, marry into favor. You laugh silently. The only thing you're marrying is it sleeps beside you, it eats beside you, and if it breaks, you must fix it yourself or risk being fined for neglect. Still, your mind drifts. In the corner of the complex, past the columns that hold up the high-vaulted ceiling, there's a mosaic of Neptune, god of the sea. His chariot is pulled by hippocamps, half horse, half fish. Sometimes, when you're crouched at just the right angle, you can see him out of the corner of your eye. Powerful, untouchable, regal. You like to pretend that Neptune is watching, not the senators, not the clients, just him. He understands water, after all. The other attendants whisper of better postings. Some hope to get transferred to the Thermae of Caracalla, the grandest in the empire. Others think smaller is better, a private bath in a rich man's house, where there are fewer clients and better leftovers. You've heard that in the East. Attendants sometimes earn more. Alexandria, Antioch, maybe even Athens. But these are daydreams, and you have too many oil jars to refill before sundown. The hierarchy of the baths isn't fixed, but it is sharp. At the top is the balnada major, the head attendant who manages the rest. He doesn't scrape, he doesn't sweat. He walks around with a ledger and speaks to the clients in a honeyed tone. You've tried to get his attention before, but he never remembers your name. Still, there are ways to earn favor. Clean, faster, be invisible but available. Remember who likes mint oil and who despises lavender. Smile, but not too much. You're not a jester, and above him a Roman magistrate tasked with maintaining public buildings, including the baths. He visits rarely but inspects everything. One bad report from him, and you could be dismissed. Or worse, reassigned to latrine duty. So you watch, you learn, you endure. The trickiest part of the job isn't the scraping. It's the etiquette, knowing when to speak and when to vanish. Knowing that, if a man of status drops his towel and walks off, you don't laugh, even if it trails behind him like a toga for ants. Knowing how to pour oil without splashing, how to avoid eye contact without seeming aloof, and how to clean vomit from marble without leaving a trace. Yes, that happens too. Some clients drink too much in the palestra, the adjoining gymnasium, or feast before they come. The result ends up on your shift, and your hands, and maybe your sandals, if you aren't fast enough. You don't get to flinch. Instead, you rinse your hands, straighten your back, and prepare for the next one. Because the bars don't sleep, not really. Even when they close for the day, there's cleanup, there's inventory, there's preparation for the morning rush. Oil jars to refill, towels to dry, strigils to polish. It never ends. But once, just once, you stayed behind when everyone left. You sat on the edge of the frigidarium, feet dangling in the cold, dark water. The baths were silent for once. No voices, no orders, just dripping echo and distant rumble from the city streets. You dipped your hand in the water and watched the ripples dance across the moonlight spilling in through the window. You imagined being a guest, a citizen, someone who was served instead of serving. Then a door creaked open, and you scrambled to your feet, back to work, or worse, back to being seen in a place you're not supposed to linger. Because you're not part of this marble palace. You're its ghost, its shadow, its scrub brush with a pulse. And tomorrow, you'll be scraping strangers all over again. The Thermae are fooled by the clatter of sandals on tile echoes across vaulted ceilings. Water splashes in every direction. From fountains, from basins, from the careless arms of clients flinging droplets as they gesture through gossip. Every corner of the bathhouse hums with life. And somewhere in all that motion, you're still scraping. At this hour, the crowd gets more complicated. Gone are the early birds who want a quick rinse before heading to the Senate steps. Now come the loungers, the philosophers, the bored aristocrats with too much coin and too little to do. They stay longer. They ask more questions. Some want a deeper massage along with their strigil scrape. Some want you to eavesdrop and laugh when prompted. Some want you to forget you ever heard anything. You oblige all of them. That's your job. The younger patricians, the kind who never had to earn a single coin, tend to flirt, not with you, necessarily, but with anyone in earshot. Their behavior borders on theatrical, reclining dramatically against the mosaic edge of the tepidarium pool, quoting poetry that nobody asked for, and commenting on your technique as if they've studied the art of bathing. That's too fast. One says, go slower, like the Massar at the Saturnalia banquet last year. Ever trained under him? You've heard that in the East. Attendants sometimes earn more. Alexandria, Antioch, maybe even Athens, but these are daydreams. and you have too many oil jars to refill before sundown. The hierarchy of the baths isn't fixed, but it is sharp. At the top is the balneator major, the head attendant who manages the rest. He doesn't scrape, he doesn't sweat. He walks around with a ledger and speaks to the clients in a honeyed tone. You've tried to get his attention before, but he never remembers your name. Still, there are ways to earn favor. Clean faster, be invisible but available. Remember who likes mint oil and who despises lavender. Smile, but not too much. You're not a jester. And above him, a Roman magistrate tasked with maintaining public buildings, including the baths. He visits rarely but inspects everything. One bad report from him, and you could be dismissed. Or worse, reassigned to latrine duty. You endure. The trickiest part of the job isn't the scraping, it's the etiquette. Knowing when to speak and when to vanish. Knowing that if a man of status drops his towel and walks off, you don't laugh, even if it trails behind him like a toga for ants. Knowing how to pour oil without splashing, how to avoid eye contact without seeming aloof, and how to clean vomit from marble without leaving a trace. Yes, that happens to some clients. Drink too much in the palestra, the adjoining gymnasium, or feast before they come. The result ends up on your shift, and your hands, and maybe your sandals, if you aren't fast enough. You don't get to flinch. Instead, you rinse your hands, straighten your back, and prepare for the next one, because the baths don't sleep, not really, even when they close for the day. There's cleanup, there's inventory, there's preparation for the morning rush. Oil jars to refill, towels to dry, strigils to polish. It never ends. But once, just once, you stayed behind when everyone left. You sat on the edge of the frigidarium, feet dangling in the cold, dark water. The baths were silent for once. No voices, no orders, just dripping echo and distant rumble from the city streets. You dip your hand in the water and watch the ripples dance across the moonlight spilling in through the window. You imagined being a guest, a citizen, someone who is served instead of serving. Then a door creaked open, and you scrambled to your feet, back to work, or worse, back to being seen in a place you're not supposed to linger, because you're not part of this marble palace. You're its ghost, its shadow, its scrub brush with a pulse, and tomorrow you'll be scraping strangers all over again. The thermi are full by the clatter of sandals on tile echoes across vaulted ceilings. Water splashes in every direction, from fountains, from basins, from the careless arms of clients flinging droplets as they gesture through gossip. Every corner of the bathhouse hums with life, and somewhere in all that motion, you're still scraping. At this hour, the crowd gets more complicated. Gone are the early birds who want a quick rinse before heading to the Senate steps. Now come the loungers, the philosophers, the bored aristocrats, with too much coin and too little to do. They stay longer, they ask more questions. Some want a deeper massage along with their strigil scrape. Some want you to eavesdrop and laugh when prompted. Some want you to forget. You ever heard anything? You oblige all of them? That's your job. The younger patricians, the kind who never had to earn a single coin, tend to flirt, not with you, necessarily, but with anyone in earshot. Their behavior borders on theatrical, reclining dramatically against the mosaic edge of the tepidarium pool, quoting poetry that nobody asked for, and commenting on your technique as if they've studied the art of bathing. That's too fast. One says, go slower, like the Massar at the Saturnalia banquet last year. Ever trained under him? You imagined being a guest, a citizen, someone who is served instead of serving. Then a door creaked open, and you scrambled to your feet, back to work, or worse, back to being seen in a place you're not supposed to linger, because you're not part of this marble palace. You're its ghost, its shadow, its scrub brush with a pulse, and tomorrow you'll be scraping strangers all over again. The thermi are full by the clatter of sandals on tile echoes across vaulted ceilings. Water splashes in every direction, from fountains, from basins, from the careless arms of clients flinging droplets as they gesture through gossip. Every corner of the bathhouse hums with life, and somewhere in all that motion, you're still scraping. At this hour, the crowd gets more complicated. Gone are the early birds who want a quick rinse before heading to the Senate steps. Now come the loungers, the philosophers, the bored aristocrats, with too much coin and too little to do. They stay longer, they ask more questions. Some want a deeper massage along with their strigil scrape. Some want you to eavesdrop and laugh when prompted. Some want you to forget. You ever heard anything? You oblige all of them? That's your job. The younger patricians, the kind who never had to earn a single coin, tend to flirt, not with you, necessarily, but with anyone in earshot. Their behavior borders on theatrical, reclining dramatically against the mosaic edge of the tepidarium pool, quoting poetry that nobody asked for, and commenting on your technique as if they've studied the art of bathing. That's too fast. One says, go slower, like the Massar at the Saturnalia banquet last year. Ever trained under him? Only a little. By the time the lamps are being lit, your hands are cramping. You're down to the last oil jar, the last towel. A few patrons linger, gossiping in low tones, unwilling to return to their homes just yet. You envy them, not their wealth, but their freedom to linger. Your shift ends not with applause, but with silence. The last strigil is hung on its hook. The water drains from the pools. The echoes fade, and for a brief moment, you are alone. You sit near the sudatorium, the steam room, now cooling rapidly, and let your body relax. Just a little. You stretch your fingers, shake out your shoulders. In the distance, you hear the city carts rattling on stone, vendors calling the last of their wares, distant dogs barking. Rome never sleeps, but for now the baths do. You look down at your hands. They smell of oil and bronze and skin. You know every scar, every callus. These hands have served senators, soldiers, and strangers. These hands have scraped the empire's elite, but they are still your hands. And tomorrow, they'll do it all over again. There's a rhythm to exhaustion. Not the dramatic kind where you collapse against a marble pillar like a tragic actor. No, the real kind. The kind that settles deep into your bones, making your movements automatic, your thoughts distant, your limbs heavy but compliant. You've been scraping bodies for so long that you don't even remember what it's like not to. The sun is gone now. Rome is glowing an amber torch. The thermi are officially closed, but the work isn't over. This is when the balneader's like, you do what no patron ever sees. You start by draining the used water from the smaller basins. Some of the larger pools have clever drainage systems. Old lead pipes that snake beneath the floor and carry the filth toward the Cloaca Maxima, Rome's grand sewer. But the side tubs, you haul buckets, one by one. There's a strange silence in the bathhouse at night. The laughter and chatter are replaced by the slap of bare feet on damp tile, the clang of bronze tools being cleaned, the occasional grunt as someone drags a heavy bench back into place. It becomes a ghost palace, a marble temple with no worshippers. And in this strange in-between, you're allowed to exist. You scrape the strigils clean using rough cloth and vinegar. The curved metal edges must be spotless by morning. Rust is your enemy, and so is judgment. Patrons can be fussy. One man once refused service because the oil flask smelled to vinegar. Never mind that he reeked of garlic and fear. The floors are the worst. All day long, they've been collecting drips of oil, footprints, dropped fig seeds, stray hair, and gods know what else. The mosaics are beautiful, tiny colored tiles forming scenes of myth and glory. But those tiny crevices trap everything. You scrub until your shoulders burn. One of the younger attendants, a boy no older than 12, sneezes loudly nearby. You glance at him. His face is flushed, eyes rimmed with fatigue. You remember when you started. Same eyes, same calluses forming on small hands. You hand him your water flask. He drinks like he hasn't had anything all day. Maybe he hasn't. You don't speak. You both just keep working. In a strange way, the night cleanup is the most human part of the job. During the day, you are a tool, an appendage, a living implement designed to scrape, pour, fetch, clean, nod, and vanish. But now, there's no pretending. You are what you are, tired, sore, and real. Someone is sweeping the corridor. Another is reorganizing the oil shelf. One older woman, the linen attendant, folds towels with an elegance you envy. No wasted motion. She's done this for 30 years, maybe more. No ambition, no pretense, just folded linen and quiet dignity. You haven't, but you nod and adjust, because this boy, barely 20, is the son of someone important. You don't remember the name, but you remember the signet ring. A lion biting a spear, someone who could have you replaced with a flick of his wrist. The air grows heavier with steam. A faint ringing builds in your ears, the kind that comes from too much heat, too little water, and far too many hours on your feet. You take shallow breaths and steal a moment to lean against a pillar in the Laconicum, the dry sauna room. Here, the stone doesn't just radiate heat, it devours it. The room feels like the inside of an oven. Clients lounge on sloped marble benches, sweat pouring off their bodies in thick rivulets. You're expected to offer fresh towels, pour a few drops of scented oil on the brazier, and assist anyone who signals for help. But nobody wants scraping here. It's too dry, too hot. You're mostly a glorified candle-bearer. Still, it's a reprieve. You watch them, these wealthy Romans, glistening, relaxed, sprawling. They talk of taxes, of lovers, of wine shipments, from Gaul. None of them talk to you, and you prefer it that way. You blend into the stone, a shape in the mist. Then the overseer calls, back to the caldarium, back to the grind. You catch sight of your reflection in one of the polished bronze mirrors as you pass through the corridor. You almost don't recognize yourself. Your tunic is soaked through, hair plastered to your forehead, strigil clenched like it's part of your hand. Your eyes, tired, yes, but still alert, still watching. Back in the hot room, an elderly man beckons. His skin is paper-thin and freckled like sun-baked clay. He has that patrician air, regal, even when naked, somehow. He says nothing, just lifts an arm. You begin the process. Oil rub, scrape. He doesn't flinch, doesn't blink, just stares ahead into the steam. You remind me of my brother, he says suddenly, voice rasping. He was a soldier, big hands like yours. Died in Germania. You don't know what to say, so you nod. I miss him. This helps, he says, gesturing vaguely to the air around him. The baths, the silence, the scrape. Feels like something is leaving me. Something heavy. You finish the routine, pat him gently with a towel, and help him up. He presses a small coin into your hand before shuffling toward the cold pool. That coin is worth more than your daily wage. You tuck it quickly into your sash before anyone sees. Not because it's forbidden. Tips are common, but because something about this feels private, and you don't get many moments like that. Most of your day is less poetic. You once had a man fart mid-scrape and ask if you could buff that out. Another time, a senator's mistress tried to seduce her lover right there on the edge of the frigidarium. A towel like a useless statue. And then there are the children. Wealthy families often bring their sons for early grooming. Not just hygiene, but manners, posture, behavior. You're expected to model service, to show them how the world responds to wealth. They watch you with wide eyes as you work, mimicking your motions, laughing when the oil slips, or they're harmless. But you always wonder, which of them will grow up to command armies? Which will order your nephew whipped for dropping a goblet? Which will remember your face and which will forget it as soon as they dry off? The line between servant and scenery is thin here. Even the architecture reminds you of that. The walls are covered in frescoes, gods bathing, satyrs, pouring wine, nymphs, lounging in rivers. None of them work. All of them indulge. You, meanwhile, stand beneath them with your scraped knuckles and strained back, trying not to drip sweat on the polished tiles. As the sun begins its descent, the baths turn quiet. They shift. The older patrons leave. The younger ones arrive. The wine flows more freely. Laughter turns to shouting. Someone sings off-key. A small game of dice begins in the play. Someone argues over oil prices. The air takes on a charged energy, like a festival teetering on the edge of chaos. You keep working. You refill oil jars. You fetch towels. You clean spilled wine. Someone throws up in a fountain, and you're handed a sponge before you can pretend not to see. And still, you scrape. The thing they don't tell you about strigil work is that it's personal, intimate. Even you are not just removing dirt. You are peeling away stress, ego, exhaustion, sometimes even guilt. Some clients thank you, most don't, but every once in a while, they leave lighter, and in a strange way, that makes your back hurt a little less. Only a little. By the time the lamps are being lit, your hands are cramping. You're down to the last oil jar, the last towel. A few patrons linger, gossiping in low tones, unwilling to return to their homes just yet. Not their wealth, but their freedom to linger. Your shift ends not with applause, but with silence. The last strigil is hung on its hook. The water drains from the pools, the echoes fade, and for a brief moment, you are alone. You sit near the sudatorium, the steam room, now cooling rapidly, and let your body relax, just a little. You stretch your fingers, shake out your shoulders. In the distance, you hear the city carts rattling on stone, vendors calling the last of their wares, distant dogs barking. Rome never sleeps, but for now, the baths do. You look down at your hands. They smell of oil and bronze and skin. You know, every scar, every callus. These hands have served senators, soldiers, and strangers. These hands have scraped the Empire's elite. But they are still your hands, and tomorrow they'll do it all over again. There's a rhythm to exhaustion, not the dramatic kind where you collapse against a marble pillar like a tragic actor. No, the real kind. The kind that settles deep into your bones, making your movements automatic, your thoughts distant, your limbs heavy but compliant. You've been scraping bodies for so long that you don't even remember what it est like not to. The sun is gone now. Rome is glowing in amber torch. The thermi are officially closed. But the work isn't over. This is when the balneators like you do what no patron ever sees. You start by draining the used water from the smaller basins. Some of the larger pools have clever drainage systems. Old lead pipes that snake beneath the floor and carry the filth toward the Cloaca Maxima, Rome's grand sewer. But the side tubs, U-haul buckets, one by one. There's a strange silence in the bathhouse at night. The laughter and chatter are replaced by the slap of bare feet on damp tile, the clang of bronze tools being cleaned, the occasional grunt as someone drags a heavy bench back into place. It becomes a ghost palace, a marble temple with no worshippers. And in this strange in-between, you're allowed to exist. You scrape the strigils clean using rough cloth and vinegar. The curved metal edges must be spotless by morning. Rust is your enemy, and so is judgment. Patrons can be fussy. One man once refused service because the oil flask smelled to vinegar. Never mind that he reeked of garlic and fear. The floors are the worst. All day long, they've been collecting drips of oil, footprints, dropped fig seeds, stray hair, and gods know what else. The mosaics are beautiful, tiny colored tiles forming scenes of myth and glory. But those tiny crevices trap everything. You scrub until your shoulders burn. One of the younger attendants, a boy no older than 12, sneezes loudly nearby. You glance at him. His face is flushed, eyes rimmed with fatigue. You remember when you started. Same eyes, same calluses forming on small hands. You hand him your water flask. He drinks like he hasn't had anything all day. Maybe he hasn't. You don't speak. You both just keep working. In a strange way, the night cleanup is the most human part of the job. During the day, you are a tool, an appendage, a living implement designed to scrape, pour, fetch, clean, nod, and vanish. But now, there's no pretending. You are what you are, tired, sore, and real. Someone is sweeping the corridor. Another is reorganizing the oil shelf. One older woman, the linen attendant, folds towels with an elegance you envy. No wasted motion. She's done this for 30 years, maybe more. No ambition, no pretense, just folded linen and quiet dignity. You think about quitting sometimes. But where would you go? You could join the dock, but that's heavier lifting and worse air. You could beg for a position in a domus as a kitchen runner, but you've heard horror stories. Hot oil burns, spoiled meat accusations, being blamed for stolen salt. The truth is, as grim as it is, the thermi are steady, predictable, safer than most jobs in Rome. There's a roof, there's routine, there's always someone who needs scraping. You finish your tasks and return to the small chamber behind the tepidarium. A break room, if you could call it that. A simple stone bench, a shelf with wax tablets and ledgers, a cold lamp flickering with olive oil. You sit, just for a second. Your knees crack. But they are still your hands, and tomorrow they'll do it all over again. There's a rhythm to exhaustion, not the dramatic kind where you collapse against a marble pillar like a tragic actor. No, the real kind. The kind that settles deep into your bones, making your movements automatic, your thoughts distant, your limbs heavy but compliant. You've been scraping bodies for so long that you don't even remember what it est like not to. The sun is gone now. Rome is glowing in amber torch. The thermi are officially closed. But the work isn't over. This is when the balneators like you do what no patron ever sees. You start by draining the used water from the smaller basins. Some of the larger pools have clever drainage systems. Old lead pipes that snake beneath the floor and carry the filth toward the Cloaca Maxima, Rome's grand sewer. But the side tubs, U-haul buckets, one by one. There's a strange silence in the bathhouse at night. The laughter and chatter are replaced by the slap of bare feet on damp tile, the clang of bronze tools being cleaned, the occasional grunt as someone drags a heavy bench back into place. It becomes a ghost palace, a marble temple with no worshippers. And in this strange in-between, you're allowed to exist. You scrape the strigils clean using rough cloth and vinegar. The curved metal edges must be spotless by morning. Rust is your enemy. And so is judgment. Patrons can be fussy. One man once refused service because the oil flask smelled of vinegar. Never mind that he reeked of garlic and fear. The floors are the worst. All day long, they've been collecting drips of oil, footprints, dropped fig seeds, stray hair, and gods know what else. The mosaics are beautiful, tiny colored tiles forming scenes of myth and glory. But those tiny crevices trap everything. You scrub until your shoulders burn. One of the younger attendants, a boy no older than 12, sneezes loudly nearby. You glance at him. His face is flushed, eyes rimmed with fatigue. You remember when you started. Same eyes, same calluses forming on small hands. You hand him your water flask. He drinks like he hasn't had anything all day. Maybe he hasn't. You don't speak. You both just keep working. In a strange way, the night cleanup is the most human part of the job. During the day, you are a tool, an appendage, a living implement designed to scrape, pour, fetch, clean, nod, and vanish. But now, there's no pretending. You are what you are, tired, sore, and real. Someone is sweeping the corridor. Another is reorganizing the oil shelf. One older woman, the linen attendant, folds towels with an elegance you envy. No wasted motion. She's done this for 30 years, maybe more. No ambition, no pretense. Just folded linen and quiet dignity. You think about quitting sometimes. But where would you go? You could join the dock, but that's heavier lifting and worse air. You could beg for a position in a domus as a kitchen runner, but you've heard horror stories. Hot oil burns, spoiled meat accusations, being blamed for stolen salt. The truth is, as grim as it is, the thermi are steady, predictable, safer than most jobs in Rome. There's a roof, there's routine, there's always someone who needs scraping. You finish your tasks and return to the small chamber behind the tepidarium. A break room, if you could call it that. A simple stone bench, a shelf with wax tablets and ledgers, a cold lamp flickering with olive oil. You sit, just for a second. Your knees crack. You look down at your palms. The skin is rougher than any Roman road. A deep line cuts across your thumb. Reopened today during a rushed strigil cleaning. You didn't even notice when it happened. There's a rag near the shelf. You wrap your hand absent-mindedly and close your eyes, just for a moment. Then someone calls. It's the overseer. He wants to make sure the laconic embrasures are fully out. One time, years ago, a fire nearly took down the south wing, because a single coal was left glowing. Now it's checked every night. And it's your turn. You force yourself up and trudge back into the dry sauna. The heat is gone, but the air still feels dense. You kneel beside the brazier and sift through the coals with tongs. Nothing glows. Just ash and blackstone. You lean back and stare up at the domed ceiling, still dripping faint condensation from the day's sweat storm. It looks like a starless sky. You wonder, as you sometimes do, how many people even know your name. Not your nickname. Not Strigil Boy, or Scraper. Your actual name. You haven't said it aloud in days, maybe longer. Does it matter to you? Because deep down, under the layers of oil and duty and silence, you are still someone, a Roman, but more than that, a witness. To flesh, to power, to the peculiar, steamy heartbeat of an empire that's obsessed with being clean but built on dirt. You remember something an old poet whispered once as you scraped his bag. He'd had too much wine, and his breath smelled like spoiled olives, but his words stuck. We are all just statues melting in the rain, he said. The lucky ones get polished now and then. You didn't understand it then. Maybe you still don't. But it's comforting. Somehow, you finish the check. Everything's out. No fire tonight. No smoke tomorrow. Back in the break room, the others are finishing their own duties. Some will sleep here on straw mats. Others will slip home through dark alleys. You are one of the lucky few who has a cot nearby. Above the kitchen storage room. It's hot and smells like pickled onions, but it's yours. You climb the steps slowly. Your shift is over, but the residue remains on your skin, in your joints, behind your eyes. You dream in steam. You wake with the scent of cedar oil in your nostrils. You hear phantom echoes of footsteps even when the world is still, because that's what the baths do. They get inside you. They soften you, then harden you. They strip you bare, not like the clients, but in a deeper, quieter way. You lie down. Finally, the cot creaks. You close your eyes. Tomorrow, you will scrape strangers again. Tomorrow, you will be invisible again. But for now, just for now, you are not a scraper, not a servant, not a shadow. You are simply a man, breathing, alive. And finally, blessedly. Segment 2. Reeking steam room stairs. A point in every Roman bath attendant. Este when the line between water and air disappears, when you step into the caldarium, the hottest steam room in the entire complex, and find yourself swallowed whole by a fog so thick it coats your eyelashes and makes your lungs feel like they're rebathing too. As a balneator, you don't enter this chamber casually. You brace yourself first. The temperature inside the caldarium often soars past anything remotely comfortable. Heated by the relentless fires of the hypercost system below, the floors are hot enough to sting bare souls if you pause too long. The walls weep moisture. Your skin begins to bead before you even move. You place the amphora beside him with a practiced nod and back away. He doesn't acknowledge you. He never does. You could collapse right there on the floor, and he'd probably assume you were part of the... There are always a few clients who treat the caldarium like a shrine. They claim the heat purifies their body and mind, that it opens their pores and their souls, but they don't do the cleaning. That means more feet, more sweat, more work for you. You move from bench to bench, collecting abandoned towels, checking the oil jars, occasionally pausing to refill the small brazier with damp herbs for a fragrant steam. You do it all in near silence, not because it's a sacred rule, but because speaking in this heat is like chewing on smoke. So you swoop in, wrap a towel under their arms, and help them toward the exit, murmuring reassurances like, "The frigidarium will bring you back, sir," while trying not to slip on their freshly sweated footprints. You've carried more half-conscious senators than you can count. One time, a man fainted right into the brazier and scorched half his beard. You were blamed for not seeing it coming, as if you could read minds through steam. Since then, you've been extra vigilant. Your eyes scanned constantly, your ears trained to distinguish the normal groans of intense heat from the particular wheeze. That means trouble is brewing. There's no glory in this job, no promotion for quickest reflexes in the steam room, no medals for most sweat mopped in a single hour, just another towel to wring out, another amphora to refill, another ghost of a patroness body heat left behind on a bench you'll soon scrub. But still, there's a strange pride, because the caldarium is where the illusion happens. Patrons arrive weary, stiff, and irritable. They leave glowing, loose-limbed, and suddenly generous with their words. They praise the design, the air, the gods. Never the people who maintained it. But, you know, you were there. You made it seamless. You kept it from turning into a festering soup of chaos. And once in a while, you notice something that makes you pause. Like today, you see an elderly woman, alone, sitting quietly in the corner bench. She's here often, always at the same hour, always silent. Her robes are finer than most, but never flashy. You've heard whispers that she was once a priestess, or maybe married to a praetor. Nobody's sure. What matters is this. Every day, as the steam thickens, she closes her eyes and breathes. Not deeply, not dramatically, but like someone who remembers what peace used to feel like. And in that moment, your role, unnoticed, thankless, becomes something ancient, ritualistic, vital. Then someone spills oil on the floor, and you're back to scrubbing. Because that's the job. The caldarium might be the heart of the Roman bath. Beating, burning, relentless. You're the one who keeps the pulse steady, who ensures that heat cleanses, not that silence soothes. And as you step out for a rare breath of cool air, chest still heaving, tunic plastered to your back, you remind yourself, tomorrow, it will be the same. The steam will rise. The benches will fill. The scraping will resume. But tonight, for a fleeting moment, the steam room is empty. And in its stillness, you hear yourself breathing, murmuring reassurances that you hope sound confident, even though your own legs feel like boiled reeds. You guide the fainting man toward the tepidarium, the warm room just outside the caldarium, where the air is still thick, but at least breathable. A colleague is waiting there with a cool cloth and a splash of vinegar water. You don't need to speak. He's seen this 100 times. You return to the steam. The door opens, and again the cloud envelops you. This time, your nose catches a different scent. Burnt eucalyptus. Someone added too much herb to the brazier. You rush over before the entire room smells like scorched forest. It's a delicate balance. Too little, and the steam is dull. Too much, and it stings the eyes. The steam is a living thing. It shifts, It billows. It wraps itself around statues and people alike. If you stare long enough, you see shapes in it. Gods, animals, sometimes just the vague outline of your own face. And in this distorted air, conversations become distorted too. You hear murmurs, bits of politics, names you're not supposed to know, whispers about appointments, about betrayals, about who was seen with whom at which banquet. The Caldarium has no walls for secrets, only steam. That's why some people love it. It's a place to confess without clarity, a place to lie without consequence. You could say anything here, and the mist would carry it away like incense from a temple. The powerful come here not just to sweat. They come to float their rumors into the fog and see if they stick to anyone's ears. You've heard enough to write your own scandal sheet, but you never repeat a word. Not because you're noble, but because your job depends on it. One wrong whisper, one repeated phrase, and you're out. Or worse, demoted to latrine duty. So you listen with your eyes, you clean with your ears shut. Now you move to the center of the room. There, in a shallow basin carved into the marble floor, a pool of hot water collects. Patrons like to sit on the edge and dangle their feet in. Others dunk their towels and press them to their chests, claiming it helps with bad humor. You approach with a bucket and begin skimming the surface with a small wooden tray. Your goal: remove the oily film that forms from all the sweat and aromatics. The way the slick layer peels away in ribbons and curls, like silver snakes, before you toss them into a waste bucket. No one sees this part of your work, and that makes it easier. No eyes watching, no judging glances. Just you, the heat, and the constant drip of water from above. Somewhere behind you, a man begins singing. It's not unusual. The steam loosens tongues and egos alike. Sometimes it's hymns to Bacchus, other times bawdy drinking songs. Today it's a mournful tune, something Greek, judging by the cadence. You recognize the melody, though you couldn't name it. One of your fellow attendants once told you it was a love song about two sailors lost in a storm. You scrape the basin clean as the song echoes, your movements syncing with the rhythm. Your skin is slick, your hair is soaked. You haven't been dry in hours. Suddenly, someone taps your shoulder. It is a client, a young noble with skin so pale he could pass for marble, if not for the sweat. He's flushed, breathing heavy, too hot. He mutters, "I can't." You catch him, just in time. He doesn't faint, but it's close. You guide him toward the exit, one hand on his back, the other steadying his elbow. He's heavier than he looks, or maybe you're just tired. No, you are tired. You're exhausted. But you smile politely, get him to the tepidarium. Sit him down, fetch water. Nod as he mumbles, "Thanks." Then back into the fog. This is your rhythm, a tide of entry and exit, of sweat and air, of oil and heat. Back inside, someone's arguing. Two men merchants, by the sound of it, are in a heated dispute about a shipment of Sicilian wine. Their voices rise above the mist like thunder. You do your best to ignore it. You've seen worse. Once, a client accused another of stealing his oil jar and nearly shoved him into the brazier. It took 3 attendants to break it up, and one of them still has a burn scar across his wrist. But this time it fizzles out. One man storms off. The other reclines like a hero after battle, arms stretched along the stone bench. He catches your eye. "Wine is worth fighting for," he says, smirking. You nod. You've never tasted it. The room is starting to thin. The heat chases people out eventually, even the stubborn ones. As they trickle away, the steam lingers. It doesn't vanish instantly. It hovers, reluctant to leave its sanctuary. The Caldarium loves to hold on to things. That includes smell. Now that the crowds have left, the true scent emerges. Not just sweat and oil, but mildew, mold hiding in grout. That metallic edge of too much water in stone. It's faint, almost masked by the herbs. But you know it. You've scrubbed it. You've tried every trick the old woman in linens told you. Lemon ash, vinegar, burnt sage. Still, it returns. Like a ghost, you kneel by the wall and begin scrubbing. Your rag is soaked within seconds. The stone drinks it. You wring it out. Start again. Over and over, until your shoulders scream and your knuckles go numb. There's a rhythm to this, too. It's not glamorous, it's not praised, but there's something oddly meditative about it. You think about your mother's hands, strong from laundry, always red from cold water. You think about your uncle, who worked in the amphora yards until a barrel crushed his foot. You think about the city you live in, vast, powerful, proud, and how none of that pride exists in these dark corners you scrub. But that's where you live, Eventually, the overseer calls. Time to clear out. You wipe your brow, gather your tools, and take one last look at the steam room. It's quieter now, dim, peaceful, in a strange, damp, overwhelming way. The kind of peace that's earned through endurance, not silence. As you step out, your lungs expand for the first time in hours. The air outside feels thin, cold, almost alien. You cough, then exhale, then smile, just a little, because you survived another day in the reeking steam room, and tomorrow you'll return. By the time your sandals touch dry stone again, the world outside the caldarium feels almost imaginary. The temperature drop is so abrupt, it feels like you've stepped into a dream, or maybe out of one. Your tunic clings to your body, heavy with the weight of other people's luxury. Your chest still rises and falls as if it is resisting the idea that cool air even exists. You don't go far. The wide corridor that connects the caldarium to the tepidarium offers no seating, but you lean against the wall anyway, catching your breath, watching the last patrons file out. Some chatter cheerfully, others say nothing, faces slack with a sleepy contentment only a full-body steam can deliver. They all look the same, clean, calm, and utterly unaware that you're one pulled muscle away from collapsing. Then the balneator major appears. His arrival is always heralded by the quiet squeak of his leather sandals and that smell of citrus oil. He insists on rubbing into his hands. He doesn't sweat. He doesn't steam. He glides, inspecting towels, nodding politely to guests, and occasionally glancing at you like he's calculating whether you'll break today. You left the brazier tray askew, he says flatly, eyes already moving to the next floor. File away in that wax tablet of a mind. Apologies corrected, he's already gone. You exhale through your nose, trying not to let irritation harden into anger. You can't afford to feel that here. Not when there's still cleanup, still more work. Still 100 ways to ruin the illusion that the bathhouse runs like magic. Because that's the secret, isn't it? The Roman thermi aren't just buildings, they're performances. A marble and mist theater where everything seems effortless. The floors are warm, but no one sees the fires burning below. The pools are filled, but no one watches the attendants hauling amphorae through service tunnels. The steam rises, thick and fragrant, and not a single patron thinks about who scrubbed the mold from the vents at dawn. You're not part of the scene. You're the ropes and pulleys behind the curtain. And the show must go on. Back in the steam room, the air is finally thinning. Not because the heat has lessened, it hasn't, but because the bodies are gone. Without their constant exhaling, sweating, and whispering, the steam begins to settle, like a storm cloud dispersing. You move with your cleaning kit, a bronze scraper, a rough cloth, a water bucket with vinegar and thyme. The recipe changes depending on who's in charge, but UV found thyme works best at masking that particular funk that seeps into everything. Skin cells and oil residue and breath. You begin at the far wall, near the statue of Venus. She's armless, of course, not due to time or damage, but because some sculptor believed armlessness made her look timeless. You disagree, she looks like she's judging you. You scrub anyway. The marble beneath your rag is smooth but stained. It's a losing battle. You wipe one spot, and another drips beside it. You clean a bench, then find a new smudge where someone sat while drying off. There is a certain futility to the work, like bailing out a leaking boat with a bowl. But you keep going, because clean is not a state. It's a cycle, a ritual, an offering to the gods of appearance. And speaking of gods, you catch a glimpse of the old priest again. He's standing near the doorway, fully clothed, which is already odd. Most men in the caldarium were only a strip of linen, if that, but he's draped in a dark tunic, embroidered with faded thread, holding a bundle of laurel branches. He sees you watching. Do you believe in purification? He asks. You blink, sir. In steam, in heat, that it cleans more than skin. You pause, not because you're rethinking, but because you're trying to understand whether this is a rhetorical question, or one of those strange moments when someone wants the man behind the strigil to have an opinion. You speak carefully. I believe sweat is on us. He grins. A few yellowed teeth. Good answer. The best answers are always short. He leaves before you can ask who he was, or why he's allowed to just stroll through the private rooms like a senator. You keep scrubbing. By the time you finish one full circuit of the steam room, wiping benches, cleaning the shallow basin, realigning the strigil hooks, your arms are jelly. Your tunic is soaked through again. You pause near the entrance to check the floor one last time. Just as you're about to leave, Your eye catches something. A small bronze pendant tucked beneath a bench. You crouch and pick it up. It's old, maybe Etruscan, a lion with its mouth open, mid-draw, tiny rubies for eyes. Someone must have lost it. Maybe it slipped off a chain. Maybe it was intentionally left behind. You turn it over in your palm. No markings. You consider pocketing it, briefly, but no. That's not who you are. You walk it to the lost items shelf, behind the linen station. You set it down beside a pile of rings, pins, and one extremely expensive sandal that's been unclaimed for weeks. They never come back for the little things. By now, the baths are nearly closed. You pass another attendant on your way out. A boy named Marcus' eyes, rimmed red from the steam. You nod. He nods back. Nothing else needs to be said. You both survived another shift. As you make your way down the corridor, you stop at the cold water basin and dunk your arms in up to the elbow. The shock is instant. Icy pain, then blessed numbness. You let the water strip away the film of heat from your body. For a moment, it feels like a baptism. Not religious, but sensory. You are washed, if only on the outside. And in that fleeting moment, you understand the priest's question. Not in words, but in sensation. Yes. Maybe the steam does clean something more than skin. Or maybe, just maybe, it gives you something to push against. A resistance, a challenge, a place where you can feel your own shape, outlined by sweat and survival. You dry off, climb the stairs, and prepare for a short, dreamless sleep. Tomorrow, the caldarium will boil again, and you'll be there, behind the fog, keeping Rome clean. One rag, one scrape, one breathless moment at a time. The last of the patrons is gone. The fire under the hypocaust has been banked. The steam lingers faintly in the corners of the caldarium, like a spirit reluctant to move on. And you, exhausted, soaked, and half-dreaming, are still here. Still working. Still invisible. This is the part no one sees. The end of the day is the most fragile time in the bath, not because it's loud. Far from it. It's because the building itself starts to exhale. The walls cool. The marble releases its heat. The basin's empty. The water becomes still, no longer stirred by hands or limbs or ladles. And in that stillness, every flaw becomes visible. A smudge here, a smear of oil there, ash from the brazier scattered on the floor like fallen stars. You kneel to clean it, slowly, precisely, because if you don't, the Balneator Major will point it out tomorrow, with that same tone of disappointment he uses whether it's a forgotten towel or a full-on sewer backup. Your rag slaps the tile in a rhythm that's almost musical now. Your whole body aches, but the motion is automatic. You no longer think about cleaning, you just do it. The same way a soldier sharpens his blade long after he's forgotten the names of the enemies it has struck. You glance at the benches, at the empty oil pots, the extinguished brazier, what remains after the crowd leaves. Everything and nothing. The steam room is, in a sense, a memory machine. It captures smells, voices, heat. It absorbs secrets and sweat. And like all things in Rome, it's maintained on the backs of people no one thanks. People like you. You who scrub until your knuckles crack. You who carry amphorae through tunnels slick with moss and rat droppings. You who refill the herb satchels and refold the linen triangle after a senator's son throws it on the floor like discarded fruit peel. The bathhouse is a palace, yes, but every palace is built on labor. Hot, humid labor. You're not alone in your cleanup. The linen woman hums as she folds towels. The water boy drains the last of the tepidarium pool with a long-handled dipper. A colleague named Tullius, older than you by a decade, is scraping grime from under the lip of the basin with a bent fork he swears is better than any tool the state provides. No one talks. There's no need. You all understand this rhythm. You've worked together through summers so hot that the steam rooms felt like mercy. Through winters so cold that your wet tunic turned stiff the moment you stepped outside. Through feasts and famines. Through emperors rising and falling. Through rumors of plagues and rebellions. The bathhouse remains. And so do you. Tonight, the silence is broken by something small, a drip, not unusual. There's always a leak somewhere, but this one is rhythmic. Too steady. You follow the sound. Behind the brazier, in a shallow groove near the back wall, water is pooling. Not much, just a thin stream from a crack in the tile. You crouch and press your fingers to it. Warm. That means it's from the upper chamber. Likely, a pressure issue from one of the upper conduits in the suspensora, the raised floor beneath the caldarium. You sigh. This is not the kind of problem that fixes itself. And you know what happens if it's ignored. More leaks, weakened mortar, and eventually a full collapse in one of the hot corners. It's happened before. They made the last guy scrub the shards barehanded before firing him. You rise stiffly, marking the location with a shard of broken tiles so the maintenance crew can find it at dawn. But part of you knows they won't. Or if they do, they'll just smear lime plaster over it and pray to Vulcan that it holds another month. Because this place, this magnificent bathhouse, with its grand arches and perfect symmetry, is like Rome itself. Beautiful on the surface, held together with spit and desperation underneath. You know this better than most. The lanterns flicker low now. The olive oil is nearly gone. Tullius gestures to you with a grunt, his knees popping as he stands. He's done for the night. You should be, too. You gather your tools. The cloths, the vinegar jar, the almost sacred strigil. Every item has its place. Every jar gets rinsed and stacked. Every towel hung or sorted. Tomorrow, it will all be needed again. Your shift doesn't end when you leave the steam room, not really. You walk barefoot now. Your sandals were too slick for scrubbing. The cool towel feels like glass beneath your soles. As you exit the caldarium, the air hits you like winter. You shiver violently, not from sickness, just contrast. Your body doesn't know what to do with dry, cool oxygen. It panics, even as it relaxes. You pass the frigidarium, empty. Still, the statue of Neptune stands at its center, chest puffed, trident poised. The god of the sea, encased in dry, silent stone. You nod to him out of habit. In the corridor near the servants' exit, the linen woman gives you a small nod. Steam's thin tonight, she murmurs. Her voice is cracked with age and soap. You shrug. Or we're just thicker. She chuckles. It's the closest thing to a joke you've heard in hours. You step outside. The night air slaps your face with a kind of mercy. You breathe deeply, too deeply, and cough. Your lungs are coated in hours of mist, oil, and incense. The stars above are faint tonight, blurred behind city smoke and distant torchlight. Somewhere, a dog barks. A cart rumbles past, its wheels clacking on the stone road. And you are here, standing, filthy, anonymous. You don't walk home right away. First, you sit on the edge of the low wall near the outer city. The city is quieter than usual. You tilt your head back and close your eyes, letting your arms hang limp at your sides. You still feel the steam, ghost-like, clinging to your limbs. Your fingers smell like thyme, sweat, and burnt laurel. You've cleaned everything but yourself. You could sneak a rinse. The balneator major would scold you, but you've done worse. You make your way to the side basin used for filling It's fed from the same channel as the caldarium, only cooler now. Tempered by hours of use and exposure to night air. You wash your hands first, then your face, then your arms, up to the elbow. You stop there. It's not a full bath, but it's enough to feel human. The water carries the grime down the drainage channel. You watch it swirl away, imagining it taking pieces of you with it. The fatigue, the aches, the thousand thoughts. You were too busy to think while working. A voice behind you startles you. You missed a spot. It's Marcus, the youngest of the attendants. 17, maybe. He's holding a half-eaten fig and a grin too big for this hour. You still here? You ask. He shrugs, waiting for linen tokens. The new ones came late. You nod. Another invisible cog in the machinery that keeps Rome from smelling like itself. Marcus sits beside you. You don't speak. He finishes his fig and tosses the stem into the dark. I like the caldarium, he says after a while. Feels like the only place where everyone's equal. Same sweat, same breath. You almost laugh. Until you see who expects you to clean it. He thinks for a second, then nods. But still, he adds, for a few minutes in the steam, they look like us. He's right, and he's wrong. And it doesn't matter, because tomorrow, you'll scrub that same steam from the walls. Tomorrow, the same men will pretend they're gods, and you'll pretend to be invisible. And the city will continue to drip, to sweat, to gleam under the weight of those who clean it. You stand, get some sleep. You tell Marcus. You too, he replies. The imported soap boy, he repeats, waving at a sealed jar sitting on the side table. You know it. Supposedly made from apple ash and cow marrow, mixed with rose water. It's only for special patrons. Or for those who complain loud enough. You suppress the urge to roll your eyes and fetch it. The imported soap is softer, slimmer, it lathers more easily, but it doesn't clean any better. It just feels expensive. You apply it, gently, waiting for a reaction. He closes his eyes and sighs. There. That's real soap. You resist the urge to remind him that ash is ash, no matter the accent. The man chatters while you work. About trade deals, about a shipment of pepper stuck at the docks, about a girl he's thinking of taking as a second wife. You nod occasionally, pretending to listen. Meanwhile, your hands move on their own. Spread, scrape, wipe, repeat. When he leaves, he doesn't tip. Of course, you rinse your tools and take a moment to stretch. Your back cracks. Your knees ache. There's a crust of dried ash on your wrist that stings when you flex. You wipe it off with a handful of straw. A new figure approaches. This one you recognize. She's an older woman, dressed plainly but neatly. Not a regular. Probably here on a pass. Maybe a widow of a minor official. She doesn't speak, just sits on the bench with a small nod. You prepare the basic soap. As you begin, she flinches slightly. The ash bites. You slow your rhythm. I'm sorry, she says quietly. My skin is thinner these days. You nod. You adjust your pressure. Soften your angle. You scrape without dragging. Rinse more often. She doesn't complain again. When you finish, she pats your hand. You have kind hands, she says. No one's ever said that to you before. Not once. Not in all your years at the bathhouse. You don't know what to say. She leaves a coin. A real one. Heavy. Then she disappears into the steam. You sit there, just for a moment, letting that linger. There's dignity in your work. You've always believed that. But there's rarely grace. Today, you found a sliver of it. The soap still smells like ash. Your tunic still clings to your ribs. The stone is still cold beneath your knees. But for once, you feel seen. And that's enough to carry you through the next round. Because the basin is filling again. And the ash waits. There is something stubbornly primitive about scrubbing men clean with ash and oil while they lecture you about civilization. Rome is the height of progress, they say, while sitting naked on a marble slab, waiting to be slathered in what amounts to cooked grease and fire dust. We are the envy of the world, they proclaim, as if the stinging mix you're reapplying to their underarms is scented with divine approval. You've stopped listening. The soap doesn't care. The ash doesn't care. The task stays the same. Today the ash batch is coarser than usual. You can feel the grit in it when you swirl it around your It's cutting more than dirt. It's catching on hair, scraping little nicks into the skin, and leaving behind a red trail you know someone will complain about later. But there's no time for it. You won't. Not much. But when you do finally lie down, on your straw mat in the corner of the storeroom, you dream of steam. Not the heat, not the grime, just the way it moved, how it swirled like breath, how, for a moment, it made every shape look the same. And then, like everything else you touch, you'll wipe it away. Segment 3. Soap made from ashes. You might think a Roman bathhouse smells like flowers, or maybe like freshly drawn water, polished marble, or citrus. That's the illusion. One the wealthy cling to. But if you're behind the scenes, if you work where the water is boiled and the linen is scraped, you know the real scent of cleanliness in Rome. Ash, oil, and ammonia. Because Roman soap isn't what modern minds imagine. There's no neat bar, no lemon zest swirl. The reality is grittier, dirtier, a paradox in itself. Roman soap is made from the remnants of fire. Fine ash mixed with fat, lye, and occasionally aromatic herbs, if the budget allows. The result is a sludge that bites the skin and strips away filth with more brute force than elegance. And you carry the bucket. It's heavy, lukewarm, and covered in flecks of gray. You don't know who made this batch, but it's thicker than usual. That means more scrubbing, less foam. Soap foam, after all, is a luxury. Most of your patrons don't realize how much their skin is scoured raw, just to feel fresh. You've learned not to judge the mixture by its smell. Sometimes the batches reek of old tallow. Sometimes they've soured in the sun. One time you're pretty sure someone used goat urine instead of water. You didn't ask questions. You just held your breath and got to work. Your destination today is the palestra, the open-air gymnasium attached to the bath. It's where men wrestle, throw javelins, lift weights, and generally sweat like draft horses. After their exercise, they expect the full treatment. Oiling, scraping, washing, rinsing. You're part of the cleanup crew, not the cheering audience. The floor is already slick with footprints and spilled oil. Somewhere, a pair of young men are grappling in the sandpit, shouting in Greek. You skirt around them and make your way to the washing station. A low marble bench, a few clay jars, a shallow basin. That's your workbench. You pour the ash soap into the basin. It oozes like wet chalk. One of the wrestlers finishes his bout and stumbles over. He's broad-shouldered, with hair like straw and a nose that looks like it's lost a few arguments. He drops onto the bench with a satisfied groan. "Make it quick," he says. "I've got a girl waiting." You don't respond. You dip your strigil into the basin, coat it with the mixture, and begin scraping. The soap doesn't glide, it drags. That's how it works. Abrasion. The fine ash particles dig into the skin, lifting away sweat, oil, and dead flesh. It's not exactly gentle. Some men flinch. Others call it invigorating. This one just grunts and scratches his chest. "Harder," he mutters. You oblige. More flakes come off. The mixture turns grey-brown as it mixes with his grime. You rinse the strigil in a side jar and keep going. Back thighs. The man doesn't care about modesty. He lifts what needs lifting and lets you work. You've done this so many times, you don't even see the body anymore. Just surfaces, angles, patterns, in skin. You notice a strange mole here, an old scar there. None of it registers as anything but terrain to be cleaned. The wrestler stands, flicks a coin at you, to light, and saunters off, whistling. You sigh. The soap in the basin is already too dirty to reuse. You dump it behind the wall into the disposal trench, where it trickles down with every other foul thing the bathhouse produces. Sweat water, blood from shaving, cuts, hair. You try not to think about where it ends up. Another client sits down. This one smells like garlic and success. His robe is too fine for the gymnasium. He's not here to wrestle. He's here to be seen. A merchant, maybe, or a lower magistrate. You'll use the imported stuff, he says, not even looking at you. You pause. The bathhouse is busier than ever. A festival is coming. Something from Minerva, maybe. And the whole city is preening. The palestra is full of men pushing their bodies to the edge, eager to look their best for tomorrow's parade. And once they've sweated enough, they come to you. One after another. Strip, scrape, rinse, repeat. Some are polite. Most are not. One man snapped at you for not getting the dirt out of his soul, as if you were a priest and not an underpaid attendant with a rusty bucket of lye. You've grown good at tuning them out, but that doesn't stop you from noticing, or hungover, or broken in ways they won't say. And still, you work, because the soap doesn't wait. The mixture was made before dawn, boiled and stirred in the back room by two young assistants who coughed the entire time. They didn't wear cloths over their mouths. They never do. The ash gets in their lungs. You've seen them spit black. No one reports it. They're replaceable. You all are. You pause between clients and look down at your hands. They're stained. The skin around your nails blackened by repeated dips into the caustic mix. Your fingertips sting constantly now. Tiny cuts from the coarse ash. So small you only notice when citrus touches them, or when sweat slips inside the wound. You could ask for balm. You won't get it. You scrape out the last of the soap from your bucket and prepare another batch. The ash comes in burlap sacks, donated by the laundry crew. They collect it from braziers, cooking fires, even burnt offerings at roadside shrines. It's a mix of everything. Some days it's dark and fine, other days it's clumpy and grey. You never know until it hits the skin. To it, you add a handful of rendered fat, usually goat, sometimes pig, depending on what was cheap at market. Then, water. Then, if you're lucky, a few sprigs of rosemary or myrtle, not for cleansing, for smell. You mix it with a carved stick, stirring slowly, watching the texture change from dry to sludge. It's never pretty, and if you mix it wrong, it curdles. One wrong turn, and instead of soap, you get paste. Useless, sticky paste that leaves the skin greasier than before. Then the patrons yell. Then the overseer blames you. So you stir carefully, count the turns, gauge the smell, feel for the right resistance in your arm. You've developed a sense for it, like kneading dough, or tracking game, or knowing when a storm is coming just by the air pressure. You pour the new mixture into the basin and call over the next man. But this one's different. He's a foreigner, maybe. His Latin is accented, his tunic too bright. He eyes the basin warily. "This is the soap?" he asks. You nod. "In Gaul we use clay," he says, a little smug. You don't care. He sits, clearly skeptical. You begin the process, and predictably, he yelps at the first drag of ash against his shoulder blade. Too rough. You soften the motion. He winces again. You Romans, so obsessed with scraping everything. Skin, honor, land. He thinks he's being clever. You think he's being loud. You finish as quickly as possible. When he leaves, he mutters something under his breath. You catch a single word. Barbarian. You smile, slightly, because here, in this seat, in this moment, he's the one being scrubbed raw by your hand. He's the one being scoured into civility. The soap doesn't care where you're from. It cuts the same. You sit back, let your arms fall to your sides. They're trembling a bit. You haven't eaten. There is a crust of dried ash at the corner of your mouth where you touched your face earlier. You wipe it away. Somewhere behind you, someone rings the signal bell. The caldarium needs more water. Someone dropped a ladle. The linen counter is out of dry cloths. The bathhouse is never silent, never still. But for a moment, just one, you alone with your basin of soap and your aching hands. And do you remember what your grandmother used to say, long before you were old enough to lift a strigil? Cleanliness is a kind of lie, but sometimes it's a lie worth believing. She was right. The soap doesn't purify. Not really. It doesn't absolve guilt. It doesn't heal wounds. It doesn't make the rich more generous or the cruel more kind. But it does make things look new. And in Rome, looking new is almost as good as being clean. You've lost count of how many bodies you've scraped today. They blur together. Oily backs, patchy beards, wrinkled knees. Each one arrives with the same assumption, that you will clean them like they worth scrubbing, that the mixture of burnt remains and fat in your bucket is a gift instead of what it truly is. The leftovers of fire, scraped from civilization's underbelly. Still, you ladled more soap into your basin. This latest batch is slightly better. One of the younger attendants, Tibetus, added sage water instead of plain. It's a small act of rebellion, or kindness, depending on how you look at it. The scent cuts the stench of sweat and old oil. For a moment, it almost smells pleasant. Tibetus is just a boy, but he understands what many adults in this place never will. When you can change the job, you make the grime smell like something else. The next man on the bench is a baker, judging by the flour caked under his nails and the burn mark along his forearm. He's quiet, respectful, and hands you a crust of warm bread before sitting. No words, just bread. A rare kind of generosity in your world. You tuck the gift aside and begin scraping. His skin is covered in fine soot, flour dust clinging to his arms like snow. The ash soap foams slightly. Not much, but enough to swirl into white-gray streaks. You work efficiently, gently. The man doesn't flinch. When you finish, he nods and walks off. The bread is still warm. You tear a piece, chew slowly, savoring it. There's rosemary in the dough, maybe olives, too. You haven't tasted anything this fresh in days. And just like that, your fatigue dulls. Not gone, never gone, but blurred, pushed back by the simple reminder that good things still exist, even here, surrounded by grease and Across the palestra you spot the soap master, old Porcius, ladling fat into the soap fats. He works slow now, his joints stiff with age, but his mixtures are legendary. He knows the ratio of ash to tallow like a priest, knows him. He could tell you which batch was stirred clockwise and which had too much rainwater, and when he dies, no one will remember his name. You consider walking over, asking him about the mix today, but before you can move, another client sits. This one is jittery, thin. His eyes dart around like a rat caught in a storeroom. Quickly, he says. Quickly, please. You nod. Begin. But when you touch his shoulder with a strigil, he tenses. You pause. You're right. He nods, but it's a lie. You move slower, more carefully. Every time the ash soap touches his skin, he twitches. It's not pain. Not exactly. It's something else. Memory, maybe, trauma clinging like invisible bruises. You finish in silence. He doesn't thank you, just drops a coin and walks away as fast as he arrived. You don't pocket the coin right away. You hold it, turn it over. There are people in Rome who carry things the bath can't scrub off. You rinse your hands and your tools. Tibetus reappears with more soap. You thank him. He smiles and hands you a pinch of crushed mint leaves. Throw it in, he says. The rich like the smell. You do. The next patron is rich. You can tell by his rings, his sandals, the way he doesn't look at you when he speaks. My back, he says. You obey. This one talks the whole time. About politics. About land disputes. About his cousin's new estate near Capua. You nod when required. You scrape as he speaks. Then he says something that makes your hands hesitate. They say the ash eats away the weak skin first. You glance at him. What do you mean? He shrugs. My grandfather used to say it. The soap reveals what's rotten. If it stings, it means something was hiding. You've never heard that before. It's nonsense, probably, but it sticks. After he leaves, you test the soap on your own forearm. Just a little. You rub it in, drag the strigil across once. The skin stings, flares, pink. You inspect it. Was something hiding? You rinse it off, annoyed with yourself for indulging the thought. You don't have the luxury of superstition. Only work, and there's more of that coming. The next man is a philosopher. You've seen him here before. He brings his own oil, insists on a private bench, and always speaks in riddles. Why do we cleanse what will always be dirty again? He asks, as you coat his chest in ash soap. You offer the usual reply, because you'll pay me if I do. He laughs. Fair, but unromantic. He leans back, sighing deeply. You know, he continues, I once asked a priest if the gods bathe. You don't reply. You're not sure if he expects you to. He said no. The philosopher says, eyes closed, because they have no filth. You rinse his strigil and keep scraping. I think they do, he adds after a moment. They just hide it better. When you finish, he hands you a small scroll, a poem, maybe, and tells you to burn it, if it's bad. You nod, tuck it under your sash. You won't read it tonight, but maybe later. It's the smell of routine, of repetition, of surviving in a place that calls itself eternal, but builds that eternity out of other people's labor. Tomorrow you'll be back here, mixing more ash with fat, stirring with the same stick, scraping the same benches, washing the same backs. And maybe, just maybe, Marcia will come looking for her pendant. Maybe she'll stand by the fountain, see it glinting, and believe it drifted there by magic, by blessing, by fate. She won Tino. It was rescued by a tired man with cracked knuckles and soap behind his ears. But that's how Rome works. The city shines because someone's always scrubbing the shadows. And tonight, that someone is you. Segment 4. Gossip, heat, and silent thief. You stand in the corner of the tepidarium long enough. Silent, unnoticed. You'll hear everything. Not from those who speak the loudest. No, the loudest men in the bathhouse rarely say anything of value. They boast, they bark, they recite poetry no one asked for. But the real things, the secrets, the schemes, the subtle betrayals, those are whispered. And whispers carry best in warm, tiled rooms, where the steam rises slow and no one suspects the man pouring their oil is listening. That's the real work of a bath attendant. Not the scraping, not the soap. It's being invisible in plain sight. The tepidarium is the perfect place for it. It's the warm room, not as stifling as the caldarium, not as brisk as the People linger here, their guards drop, their limbs loosen, their minds drift, and that's when they talk. Today, the heat is thick but not suffocating. A perfect balance. The water in the wall, pipes murmurs, gently. The stone benches are warm to the touch. You move quietly between the men, offering oil, fetching towels, refilling scent pots, but your ears are wide open. The first conversation drifts in from two older senators, reclining like turtles in tunics. He's buying land outside Ostia, claims it's for olives, but I know what he's planting. Influence's son is courting Kaito's niece. No, that skinny girl. Skinny girls become powerful wives. You file the details away, not because you plan to use them. You have no ambitions of power. But knowledge is protection. You've seen men lose their jobs because they didn't know the right things when accused. You've seen others spared because they did. Further along the bench, a trio of young men are laughing too loud. She poured the wine over his head, in front of the whole table. What did he do? What could he do? Wipe his face with dignity and propose marriage. More laughter, louder. One of them waves for you, pointing at an oil jar. You bring it. He doesn't thank you. They rarely do. But one of them glances at you just for a second, and you see it, the flash of recognition. Not kindness, not respect, but awareness. As if he suddenly remembers you have ears. The conversation dies. This happens more and more lately. There is a new kind of roaming in the bathhouse, one who knows the walls have cracks, and sometimes the cracks listen. They speak in code, in gestures. They shift topics when you're too close. You've learned to read those shifts. A pause after a name. Guilt, a whisper followed by a glance. Power play. A question left unanswered. Fear. You move on. At the far side of the room, in a quieter corner, two women sit with their sandals off and towels over their knees. This is rare. The tepidarium is mostly male-dominated during these hours. But sometimes, wealthy women negotiate access or arrange private hours. These two have done just that. One speaks low, but her words are clear. My husband's spending too much time at the Sabura house. The other nods. You should speak to the fishmonger. He sees everything. You know the fishmonger. He's half blind and smells like brine. But, yes, he does see everything. I could poison him, the first woman says, with the tone of someone deciding between sandals. You could, the other replies. But then you'd need a new husband, and those are so loud these days. They laugh softly. You pretend not to hear. You adjust the steam valve. You check the oil burner. You become scenery again. But you don't forget. Later, you see one of them tuck a small satchel into her robe. Herbs, maybe. Or powder. You don't ask. The tepidarium hums. Gossip is its heartbeat. Heat is its blood. Even the walls know too much. The frescoes along the upper perimeter depict scenes of cleansing. Gods bathing. Servants pouring water. Birds fluttering above nymphs. In marble pools. The imagery is serene. Idealized. No one in the paintings looks tired. No one scrubs. No one listens. But you do. You hear the merchant mutter about his debts. The sun is beginning to lower. The shadow of the bathhouse stretches across the palestra. You clean your tools again, dump the used soap into the runoff trench. It flows down with the day's worth of scum ash and oil. You watch it go. Soap made from fire, dirt washed away with dirt. And still the city gleams. You pack your things and sit back. For a moment, the breeze carries the scent of mint and bread and something close to peace. You wonder if the gods do bathe, if they scrape off the weight of the world, or if they simply let it bake into their skin, like everyone else. You wonder, too, if the ash ever remembers what it used to be. A tree, a home, a prayer. And you wonder if, tomorrow, you'll wake up still smelling of it. The workday ends the way it always does. With you kneeling beside a basin of filth, hands soaked in lye, back stiff from hours of scrubbing flesh that doesn't belong to you. The final mixture of ash soap is now more dirt than cleanser, streaked brown from grime, heavy with oil shed by the powerful and the poor alike, and it still bubbles faintly. The suds cling to the side of the basin, reflecting the torchlight like little golden domes. You watch them for a second. They're almost beautiful. If you forget what made them, Tibetus appears again, a bundle of towels over one shoulder, and a crooked grin on his face. They want someone to clean the upper fountain drains, he says. You raise your eyebrows. No, they said it smells like boiled onions and ambition. You groan, but you're already rising. Your knees crack like amphora lids. He laughs, the kind of laugh only someone with younger joints can afford. You rinse your arms, shake off the sting, and head toward the upper level. The fountain drains are a design marvel. Water loops up through hidden clay pipes, spills down carved lion heads, and recirculates via patrons admire the engineering, but never think about what happens when skin flakes, oil, hair, and chunks of ash soap build up in the outflows. That's your domain. You reach into the opening, fingers closing around a tangle of something that squishes when you squeeze it. You try not to breathe through your nose. You pull. A wet schlup echoes through the corridor. It's hair, lots of it, bound with hoon. You drop it into your bucket with a dull splat. One more drain to clear. The work is slower now. Your hands move with the dull precision of habit. Not because you're focused, you're past the point of thought. Your body just knows what needs to be done. As you reach into the second drain, your fingers brush something smooth. Round you fish it out. It's a small clay pendant. An amulet, maybe. The kind young lovers toss into fountains for luck. Or someone's token of devotion to Fortuna, goddess of chance. You clean it gently on your tunic. There's a name scratched on the back. Faded but legible. Marcia, you set it aside on the edge of the fountain. You never keep the things you find. That's a rule among Attendant. What falls in stays there. Unless it clogs something, then it's discarded. But sometimes, when something feels personal, you leave it where the owner might come back to find it. You finish the last drain. Dump the sludge behind the pillar where it won't be noticed. Wipe your hands on a rag that's already soaked through. Then, finally, the day ends. You're the last one in the bathhouse tonight. The floors are quiet. The marble glows faintly under torchlight. Water trickles somewhere. Soft, steady. The scent of ash still clings to your skin, despite the rinsing. You sit on a bench near the cold pool, back straight, eyes half closed. You don't sleep. You can't not hear. But you rest. You remember your first day. You were barely taller than the You thought the soap smelled like old cheese. You thought the baths were magic. You thought you'd only be here for a season. Now it's been years. You've changed. Your hands are thicker. Your spine curves a little to the left. Your eyes rarely meet anyone's directly. But the ash soap still clings to your memory, sharper than any scent. You hear the clerk whisper about falsifying grain records. You hear the magistrate describe, in uncomfortable detail, his night with a dancer from Syria. And through it all, no one looks at you. Except once, a boy, maybe 12, sitting beside his father, watching everything. You're used to being ignored by the rich, but children sometimes see through it. He stares as you refill the oil lamp. Curiously, you meet his gaze. Briefly, his father notices and places a hand on the boy's shoulder, steering his attention elsewhere. That's how it works. Don't look too long at the ones beneath you. You might remember their people. You finish your tasks. Wipe your hands on a linen cloth. You have a few minutes before the next set of patrons. You sit on the edge of the warm bench, just for a breath, letting the heat soak into your back. The room quiets. Not empty, just momentarily hushed. And in that silence, you hear something new. Not words, breath. You hear the way the room breathes. Every inhale, every sigh, every ripple of heat moving across skin. The rustle of linen, the soft splash of poured oil, the flutter of a moth near the flame. You realize, this is what the rich never notice. Not the gossip, not the politics, but the stillness beneath it all. You live in that stillness. You serve from it. You gather stories from its margins. And when the room fills again, with noise, with heat, with ambition, you'll be right here, behind the jar, holding the strigil, nodding when spoken to. Silent, present, and listening. By midday, the tepidarium is at its loudest. The heat has sunk deep into the walls, and the smell of warmed oil, damp linen, and perfumed sweat hangs like a second skin over everything. The patrons don't notice. They're too busy talking. For you, the noise is both a burden and a gift. It wears on the ears. All that laughing, posturing, arguing, but it also means nobody pays attention to the man sweeping the corners, refilling the incense tray, or adjusting the vents. You're part of the bathhouse architecture now. A fixture, a warm blur at the edge of their vision, which makes it easier to hear the things they say when they think no one's listening. Today, the subject of interest is a praetor's wife. She was seen with that actor, again, someone mutters. The one from Pompeii. No shame, another replies. And, new consequence. She could spit in the forum and men would line up to clean it. Laughter. You pass by with a tray of laurel-scented towels, careful not to drop the smallest one. You're close enough to see their feet, sandaled, well-kept, expensive, and just far enough away to pretend you don't hear. Nearby, two men are deep in political debate. The eastern provinces are bleeding coin. If they don't raise taxes, we'll all feel it. The poor always feel it. The rich just complain louder. They talk like senators, but their robes are too worn. Ex-civil servants, maybe, or men pretending to be more connected than they are. You've seen their kind before. Big opinions, soft hands. You collect a used oil flask from their bench, watching the room without turning your head. At the far end, a woman sits alone. That's unusual. She wears no jewelry. Her eyes are rimmed with something. Not makeup. Sleep, maybe, or its absence. She watches the others without blinking. She's listening to. You recognize the expression. You offer her water. She accepts it without speaking. You nod and walk on. Later, you hear her say, to no one in particular. It's louder when no one tells the truth. You don't know what she means, but the phrase sticks. The tepidarium has no central fire, no brazier. Its warmth is passive heat that lingers, that seeps up from the hypercost below, that radiates from the thick marble walls. That makes it the most deceptive room in the bath. It feels mild. But stay long enough, and it strips you bare. Some men nap here, others gossip. A few bring scrolls, pretending to read, while secretly watching the room. You've seen scribes memorize conversations they'll later sell to client. You've seen messengers pass letters, discreet as shadows. You've even seen a senator accept a bribe tucked inside a folded towel. The baths are public, a paradox of openness. Everyone sees you, so no one thinks they shouldn't. And you're a shadow on the edge of their view. That makes you dangerous. Not in power, but in knowledge. So you keep your mouth shut, you nod, you serve, and you remember. You remember the time a priest of Apollo wept quietly for 10 minutes, then walked out without washing. You remember when the governor's nephew spoke of a fire in Alexandria, before it reached the forums. You remember when a famous orator muttered a poem under his breath, then destroyed the only written copy. You remember everything, and no one remembers you. Tibetus returns with a stack of clean linens. They're drinking near the fountain again, he whispered. It's turning into a symposium in there, you sigh. That means someone's going to vomit on the tiles. Again. Did they bring wine, you ask. He nods. And figs. The sticky ones. You mutter a prayer to Neptune, not that he care, and head toward the other room to prepare a mop. On the way, you pass a group of older women talking in low tones. Their conversation is clipped, careful. He was always kind. Even when I lost the bracelet, he never asked where I got mine. Just smiled. Do you think he knew? Of course he knew. That's why he gave it away. You catch only fragments, but the tone is unmistakable. Morning. Regret you've learned that gossip isn't always sharp. Sometimes it's soft. Sometimes it's how people remember someone without saying they miss them. The tepidarium is full of memories like that, curled around columns, hiding in steam, baked into the benches. You return with the mop. The fountain room is as bad as expected. The tiles are sticky. The air smells like fermented grapes and sandalwood. A young man is trying to flirt while lying sideways across 2 benches. You begin mopping the spill near his foot. He doesn't move. You know, he slurs. You should charge extra for this kind of service. You don't answer. I'm serious, he continues. You do more work than anyone in here. You squeeze them up harder than you need to, and you'll be the first to complain when we miss a spot. He blinks, surprised you responded at all. Then he grins. Fair enough. You finish cleaning in silence. When you leave, he doesn't say thank you. Back in the tepidarium, the woman from before is still sitting alone. She hasn't moved. The heat is heavier now. The air feels thick. You check the vents. One's jammed slightly open. You adjust it, letting more warmth seep in. A mistake, maybe, but the room is clearing out. Soon it will be just her and the walls. She calls to you. You pause. Yes, Domina. She gestures to the empty bench across from her. That's not a request you usually hear. You glance around. No other patrons, no overseer. She doesn't look at you when she speaks. I came here today to forget him. You don't ask who, but everyone keeps talking. About politics. About fish. About poetry. They don't even know they're doing it. You nod slowly. She finally turns to look at you. You hesitate. I hear everything, you say. She smiles faintly. Good. Then you'll remember. I was quiet. She stands, leaves a coin, walks out without another word. Later, when the lamps are lit and the shadows grow longer, you'll remember her silence more clearly than any story told today. Because silence in the tepidarium is rare. It's the only kind of gossip that feels like truth. And as the heat lingers and the room quiets once more, you think, maybe the real work of a bath attendant isn't scraping. Maybe it's bearing witness to everything said and everything left unsaid. As twilight rolls over Rome, the tepidarium begins its slow descent into hush. The heat doesn't go away. It never truly does. But it stops blooming. It just exists, like a presence, a breath held inside the marble bones of the bathhouse. The crowd thins. The energy drops. Voices lower. Secrets soften. This is when the whisperers arrive. They come late, after the clamor fades. Men who don't want to be seen at peak hours. Women who've paid for private access. Officials who claim to work late, but somehow have time to recline half-naked in warm air for an hour before supper. They nod to you but never use your name. Tonight the first is a lictor, one of the bodyguards attached to a magistrate. He's alone, tunic loose, sweating more than usual. You hand him a towel without being asked. He takes it, rubs his face, and mutters. They're going to kill him. You blink. He says nothing more, just sits back, closes his eyes, and breathes. You don't ask who they are. You know better. A few minutes later, 2 scribes slip in. Young, sharp-eyed, always speaking just under their breath. They sit across from one another and speak in half-finished phrases. She told him. Only what he expected. But if they meet, they won't. He's not that stupid. You drop a flask near them, accidentally. They stop talking. You apologize. They don't respond. Just stand and leave a minute later. You pick up the flask and whisper the phrases under your breath as you clean. She told him. If they meet? He's not that stupid. You have no idea what it means. But you won't forget it. Gossip in the tepidarium moves like incense. It doesn't blast. It coils. It lingers in the corners, dances up into the arches, settles along the grooves in the stone. You hear it in layers. There's the surface gossip. Who slept with whom? Whose villa is being repossessed? Whose son is writing very dangerous verses about the emperor? Then there's the social gossip. Who's favored? Who's falling out? Who was seen at whose funeral? But the third kind, the real kind, is barely spoken at all. It lives in tone, in the space between words, in who stops talking when someone else walks into the room. A man enters now with a limp. You've seen him before, always limping, never explaining. He never speaks, not to other patrons, not to you, but he listens. You've watched him nod along to conversations he isn't part of, watched the rise and fall of every sentence, like he's reading waves on the Tiber. Tonight he sits near the archway. A headline without a headline. The women finish their sentence with synchronized sighs and silence. You rinse the oil cups and say nothing. When the final patrons begin to trickle out, the room changes again. Not just in noise, in feeling. Now it's yours. Now the heat belongs to the ones who worked it. Tibetus returns with a satchel of herbs, lavender, pine, a bit of myrrh. For the burners, as you move, you hum. Not a song, just a few notes. You don't know where they came from. Is that yours? Tibetus asks. You shrugged. Maybe. He grins. Sounds old. You nod. He nods back. Just before you extinguish the final lamp, someone returns. It's the limping man. He steps back into the room, silent as a breath. You straighten, alert. He raises a hand, not in greeting, but as if testing the air. Then he looks at you, and says, they only whisper if they think no one's writing it down. Then he leaves. You stare at the empty doorway for a long time. Tibetus speaks first. Was that for you or for himself? You don't answer, because the truth is, it doesn't matter. The heat, the gossip, the silence, they all burn down eventually, and the ones who survive are the ones who remember. The last thing you do before leaving is touch the marble bench nearest the vent. It's warm, not from fire, but from stories. You carry them with you into the dark, not because they're yours, but because no one else will. There's a myth among the bath attendants, whispered more than believed, that if you sit completely still in the tepidarium after everyone leaves, the marble will speak to you. Not in words, of course, but in memories. They say the stone holds the breath of every conversation it's ever heard. That's somewhere in the seams between the floor tiles and the walls. All the laughter, plotting, seduction, and betrayal seeps down and waits for silence. And if you're quiet enough, truly quiet, you can feel it stir. Tonight, you decide to test that. Everyone else is gone, even Tibetus, who usually lingers to gossip about the gossip. The lamps are dimmed, the steam has cooled, and the only sounds are the soft crackle of spent incense and the occasional drip of water from the ceiling. You sit on the lowest bench, back straight, hands on your knees, and breathe. The warmth of the tepidarium is gentle now, more like memory than heat. It doesn't press against you like in the caldera. It wraps you, cradles you, coaxes you to slow down. Something happens. Not a sound, not a vision, but something shifts. You remember the first time you overheard a man plan a bribe here, the way he said the word gift with his teeth clenched like it meant knife. You remember a woman whispering her daughter's name to a friend, swearing her to secrecy, not realizing 3 attendants were within earshot. You remember a poet rehearsing lines aloud, pretending to murmur them to himself, hoping someone important was listening. And you remember the silences, too, the ones that meant more than speech. The silences after bad news. The silences between lovers who didn't dare say what they felt. The silence that fell when someone realized their secret had been heard. You carry all of it. It hums in your ribs now, a body full of overheard truths. You rise slowly. The room feels heavier than it did when you sat. You gather the empty oil jars, stack the folded towels, snuff the last lamp. The tepidarium will rest now, until dawn. But you won't. Not yet. Outside, the night air bites. After so much warmth it feels personal. You walk toward the service quarters, where your mat and blanket wait. But halfway there, you pause. Not from fatigue, but from something else. A memory you didn't expect. It's a woman's voice. From weeks ago, she sat near the edge of the room, fingers threaded tightly in her lap. She said, I tell the truth too loudly, and it always echoes. You'd almost forgotten her. She left no name, left no coin, but she said something true, and you stored it away like a precious item. You wonder where she is now, whether she still speaks loudly, whether anyone still listens. In your quarters, the straw mat scratches your legs, the blanket smells faintly of mold and lavender. You lie down, but sleep doesn't come yet. You keep thinking of all the things you've heard that no one else remembers. Does that make you a thief? Or a witness? You've never written any of it down. You've never repeated it, not even to Tibetus, not even to yourself. But it lives in you. The merchant's affair, the soldier's, 'tis the magistrate's broken prayer. Each one a tile in the mosaic of this life you didn't choose. But now live with reverence. You remember what the limping man said just before he vanished. They only whisper if they think no one is writing it down, but you are. Not in wax, not in ink, but in skin, in breath, in memory. Maybe that's what all this heat is for. Not just for cleansing, but for softening. Softening the things too hard to carry until they can be pressed gently into someone else. Someone like you. You sit up, you take one of the worn cloths from beside your cot, and you whisper into it not loud, just enough for the linen to carry it, just enough to remember that someone once said. She told him, if they meet, he's not that stupid. You tie the cloth in a knot. You leave it in the corner. Tomorrow someone else will clean it. They'll think it's just another rag. But maybe, just maybe, it will carry a story, because this is what the bathhouse is. Not just steam and stone and skin, but a cathedral of secrets. And you're not just the man with the oil and the scraper. You're the one who knows where the silence lives, and where it goes when it breaks. Segment 5. Chamber pots and fireplace buffer the steam. Before the scraping, before the soft gossip curling along the walls of the tepidarium, there is the grime. The real grime. The kind no one likes to think about. The kind that doesn't come off with ash soap and scented oils. Because even in Rome's most magnificent bathhouses, someone still has to deal with what's left behind when the glory is done. That someone is you. And today, you've been assigned latrone duty. It happens in rotation, though the word rotation is generous. It tends to fall to whoever's lowest on the invisible ladder that day. Tibetus feigned a limp this morning, and Porcius has seniority. That leaves you, and a pile of chamber pots behind the massage room that smells like something the guards would exile a man for creating. You carry a small scraper, a sack of rags, and a bucket of diluted vinegar water. Nothing more. You step through a narrow archway, past a decorative curtain meant to hide the reality from patron's eyes, and into the chamber where dignity goes to die. 6 terracotta pots, 3 full to the brim, 1 cracked, all warm. You breathe through your mouth and begin. There is a rhythm to even this. You lift, you empty, you rinse, you scrape. The motion becomes mechanical. The stench. You've trained your body to ignore it, or at least to delay its protest until after your shift ends. There is no glamour here, no gossip, no poetry, just residue. You wonder, as you pour the first pot into the disposal trench, whether the man who used it ever thinks about who will empty it. Probably not. That's the point. Rome runs on forgetting the people who do the dirtiest work. But you remember, the first time you cleaned a pot, you cried afterward, not from the smell, from the shame, not because you were seen, because you weren't. You could have disappeared that day, and no one would have noticed until the pots overflowed. Now, you don't cry, you just work. Once the pots are emptied and rinsed, you move on to the This is the strange duality of your role. 1 hour scraping filth, the next stoking the literal heart of the building. The fireplace systems that warm the caldarium, even the massage stones, they all begin in the low chambers where attendants like you tend to flame. You descend the steps behind the linen room. It's hotter down here, but dry. The smell is better. Charcoal and dust, maybe a faint trace of lavender ash from someone's discarded pouch. The fire's been burning since dawn. You can tell by the color. Not orange, but a deep pulsing red, like the breath of some ancient beast. You pick up the poker and begin turning the coals. The hearth is large, too large for a single pair of arms, but the others are busy above, and the fire won't feed itself. You shovel fresh wood into the mouth of the furnace, mindful of the ash that leaps up when you move too fast. There's a certain intimacy here, a strange peace. Unlike the tepidarium, no one gossips down in the fire chamber. No one plots or flirts or whispers names with daggers behind them. Here, the only sound is the crack of heat and your own breath bouncing off soot-dark walls. You think about what one of the philosophers said yesterday. The one who likes to oil his knees and talk about virtue. All great things are born in flame or silence. He meant ideas, but he might have meant this. You stoke the coals and imagine them like veins beneath the bath. Heat that pulses upward into the bodies of those who think the warmth is divine and effortless. You know better. It's not divine. It's you. When the fire is stable, you climb back up, blinking against the change in light. The appetiterium is busy again. Patrons undress with theatrical sighs, stretching as if they've just returned from war instead of breakfast. You nod at one. You glance at the cleaned chamber pots, lined up neatly behind a screen. No one thanks you for those either. Later, while carrying a tray of warm stones to the massage room, you pass two attendants arguing softly. They think the gods clean the hearth, one says. They think the gods wipe their backsides, says the other. They both laugh. It's true. Patrons like to believe the heat is sacred, the cleanliness automatic. They rarely speak of pots, or coals, or men like you. But every now and then, one note. Last week a woman handed you a folded note with a fig inside. No name, no words, just a fig. The sweetest thing you've tasted in months. Once, a boy asked you why the floor never burned his feet in the caldera. You told him the truth. Because someone sweats over the coals below to keep it just right. He looked at you like that wasn't possible, like comfort shouldn't require labor. The massage room smells better now. Pressed herbs, wax, a hint of warmed honey. You set the stones on the table, each one perfectly heated, smooth as bone. The masseuse nods and thanks. She's one of the few who ever does. Before you leave, she says quietly, I heard what you did with the cracked pot. You pause. What about it? Could have left it. No one would have known. You shrugged. I would have known. She nods. Then, that's why this place still works. You leave before she can say more. Because the moment you start to believe in the praise, the heat feels heavier. That night, after the fires are banked and the pots stacked from morning, you sit in the warm dark just outside the main chamber. You smell like smoke. Your hands are raw. Your knees ache from crouching. And yet, you've kept the bathhouse clean. You've kept its fires burning. You've given silence and heat to people who believe they deserve both, without asking how they got it. You watch the last coal dim in your brazier, and you whisper, to no one, it was me. You start the next morning before the sun does. Again, not because anyone asked, they never do, but because if you don't, someone else will, and they'll do it wrong. They'll leave soot in the drain corners. They'll forget to tap the cracked pots to make sure they re-dry before stacking them. They'll poke the furnace too hard and scatter embers onto the floor again. And someone has to be the one who knows better. So it's you. The hearth is cool when you descend. Barely embers in the pit. The bathhouse above is silent. Warmth lingers in the walls, like yesterday isn't done with you yet. You kneel in front of the firebox, shift aside the blackened wood, and begin laying a new pyramid. Thin twigs first, then broken slats from old amphora crates, then heavier logs, one careful breath from the bellows, two, a third. Then, life. The flame blooms, cautious at first, like it doesn't trust you yet. You coax it forward, feed it slow. Fire taught you long ago that you can T-force it. It either grows with you or it burns you. Rome may run on ambition, but fire runs on patience. You understand fire. It behaves like the patrons upstairs, flickering, loud, beautiful, unpredictable, needy, hungry, and just dangerous enough to remind you who really holds the power. Once the furnace is breathing properly again, you sit back and rub your soot-stained palms on your thighs. You don't bother wiping your face. It's not worth it yet. The first noise you hear isn't a voice, it's a part. There's a certain intimacy here, a strange peace. Unlike the tepidarium, no one gossips down in the fire chamber. No one plots or flirts or whispers names with daggers behind them. Here, the only sound is the crack of heat and your own breath bouncing off soot-dark walls. You think about what one of the philosophers said yesterday, the one who likes to oil his knees and talk about virtue. All great things are born in flame or silence. He meant ideas, but he might have meant this. You stoke the coals and imagine them like veins beneath the bath. Heat that pulses upward into the bodies of those who think the warmth is divine and effortless. You know better. It's not divine. It's you. When the fire is stable, you climb back up, blinking against the change in light. The appetiterium is busy again. Patrons undress with theatrical sighs, stretching as if they've just returned from war instead of breakfast. You nod at one. You glance at the cleaned chamber pots, lined up neatly behind a screen. No one thanks you for those either. Later, while carrying a tray of warm stones to the massage room, you pass two attendants arguing softly. They think the gods clean the hearth, one says. They think the gods wipe their backsides, says the other. They both laugh. It's true. Patrons like to believe the heat is sacred, the cleanliness automatic. They rarely speak of pots, or coals, or men like you. But every now and then, one note. Last week a woman handed you a folded note with a fig inside. No name, no words, just a fig. The sweetest thing you've tasted in months. Once, a boy asked you why the floor never burned his feet in the caldera. You told him the truth. Because someone sweats over the coals below to keep it just right. He looked at you like that wasn't possible, like comfort shouldn't require labor. The massage room smells better now. Pressed herbs, wax, a hint of warmed honey. You set the stones on the table, each one perfectly heated, smooth as bone. The masseuse nods and thanks. She's one of the few who ever does. Before you leave, she says quietly, I heard what you did with the cracked pot. You pause. What about it? Could have left it. No one would have known. You shrugged. I would have known. She nods. Then, that's why this place still works. You leave before she can say more. Because the moment you start to believe in the praise, the heat feels heavier. That night, after the fires are banked and the pots stacked from morning, you sit in the warm dark just outside the main chamber. You smell like smoke. Your hands are raw. Your knees ache from crouching. And yet, you've kept the bathhouse clean. You've kept its fires burning. You've given silence and heat to people who believe they deserve both, without asking how they got it. You watch the last coal dim in your brazier, and you whisper, to no one, it was me. You start the next morning before the sun does. Again, not because anyone asked, they never do, but because if you don't, someone else will, and they'll do it wrong. They'll leave soot in the drain corners. They'll forget to tap the cracked pots to make sure they re-dry before stacking them. They'll poke the furnace too hard and scatter embers onto the floor again. And someone has to be the one who knows better. So it's you. The hearth is cool when you descend. Barely embers in the pit. The bathhouse above is silent. Warmth lingers in the walls, like yesterday isn't done with you yet. You kneel in front of the firebox, shift aside the blackened wood, and begin laying a new pyramid. Thin twigs first, then broken slats from old amphora crates, then heavier logs, one careful breath from the bellows, two, a third. Then, life. The flame blooms, cautious at first, like it doesn't trust you yet. You coax it forward, feed it slow. Fire taught you long ago that you can T-force it. It either grows with you or it burns you. Rome may run on ambition, but fire runs on patience. You understand fire. It behaves like the patrons upstairs, flickering, loud, beautiful, unpredictable, needy, hungry, and just dangerous enough to remind you who really holds the power. Once the furnace is breathing properly again, you sit back and rub your soot-stained palms on your thighs. You don't bother wiping your face. It's not worth it yet. The first noise you hear isn't a voice. It's a pot. A soft clink as it's placed against stone above. Then another. The linen attendant has started her rounds. You'll trade paths soon, her carrying folded towels. You're carrying the stink no one speaks of. You head back up. The chamber pots are waiting. One of them is already full. You lift it, not even glancing to see whose mess it is. You've stopped looking. You pour it carefully into the designated disposal pipe. Not too fast, or it splashes, and the splash is never clean. When people think of Rome, they picture columns, temples, forums. You think of this. The clunk of terracotta against terracotta. The hiss of vinegar water cutting through the worst of it. The shameful luxury of those who can defile a pot and walk away, certain someone else will carry their shame. You rinse the pot, scrub it with a rag so worn, it's more thread than cloth. You dry it, balance it carefully on the storage shelf, one down. Photogotibitus passes by with a tray of oil jugs. He wrinkles his neck. You grunt. He glances at the pots. You ever wonder if the emperor knows these exist? You nod. Knows, just doesn't care. Tibitus smirks. Sounds like Rome. Then he's gone, back into the scented world of sandalwood and sage. You stay, ankle deep in vinegar and the remnants of last night's dinner. Later, you're called to the private chamber. This usually means trouble. The private rooms are reserved for those with names longer than yours and sandals that cost more than a year of your wages. They're tiled in imported stone, decorated with mosaics of dolphins and wine gods, and filled with the kind of perfume that gives you a headache if you breathe too deep. Today, it's a senator. You don't know his name, but you recognize his hands. The rings, the way he gestures, like he's conducting an invisible orchestra. He's lying on the bench, one arm flung over his eyes. The attendant nods at you. Put. You glance behind the curtain. Of course. Overflowed. On the good tile, you say nothing. You just kneel. There's a technique to it. First, you blot. Then you scrape. Then you apply the vinegar rag and scrub in tight spirals, so you don't etch the surface. The whole time, the senator mutters under his breath about how slaves in the East do this better. You are not a slave. You are barely a citizen. When you're done, the floor gleams. The senator doesn't thank you, but the other attendant does, with a subtle glance. That's enough. In the furnace room later, you catch yourself humming again. You're not sure when that started. The tune is wordless, circular. Something you made up. Maybe something your mother sang once while washing clothes. It keeps the rhythm steady, helps you forget the smell. You poke at the coals. The fire's hot, angry now. Too angry. You open the vent slightly, let it breathe. If you don't regulate it, the heat in the caldarium will blister the seats again. You learned that the hard way last spring. The fire snaps at your fingers as you adjust the damper. You snap back. Outside, a patron argues with an attendant over missing sandals. Voices echo. Accusations fly. Somewhere, a clay cup breaks. No one blames the patron. You lean against the wall, sit smeared, exhausted. And then you notice the fire is humming too, low, steady, a bass rhythm beneath the breath of Rome. You wonder if the senators hear it when they soak above, if they feel it under the stone, this pulse of heat, of ash, of labor, and think it's just the bath working. It's not the bath, it's you, and men like you, who rise before the sun, and scrub chamber pots clean, before the gods are even awake. You who make fire from nothing. You who keep this empire warm. And when the last pot is cleaned, the last ember fed, and the last whispered insult about lazy servants fades from the halls, you sit on the back step with a cup of well water and close your eyes, just for a moment. Because tomorrow, it starts again. But tonight, you earned your own silence. There are two smells that follow you home each night, whether you sleep beneath the linen shelves or on your straw mat near the storeroom door: smoke and rot. One is from the hearth, a badge of labor that sinks into your tunic, your hair, the webbing between your fingers. The other is from the pots. That daily insult no soap can scrub away. No matter how hard you rake your skin with a handful of ash and rosemary, you've stopped trying. Your body simply is those smells now. A mixture of soot and sewage and quiet, invisible endurance. No one complains. No one thanks you. They just expect you to show up again tomorrow. By late morning, your hands are raw from scrubbing the underrims of pots most men want to even touch with their eyes. You've learned to rotate which knuckle does the heavy lifting. Not because anyone taught you, but because the skin splits slower that way. You empty the last part and carry the bucket toward the runoff chute, passing to a noblewoman whispering behind a veiled partition. One catches sight of you, wrinkles her nose. By the gods, she mutters, fanning the air. You bow, not too deep, just enough. You pour the waste, you wipe your hands, and you walk on. You're not angry, you're just practiced. At midday, a runner appears. Hot coals needed in the north massage chamber, stones cooling too quickly. You nod, rinse your arms in a side basin, and descend again to the fire pit. The stairs are slick from condensation. You've slipped there once, landed flat, bruised your hip for a week. You move slower now, wiser. The fire is hungry again, eager from its long morning shift. You open the chamber and feed it carefully, not too fast, or the flames will roll outward and scorch your eyebrows off. You load the iron bowl with glowing stones, tuck your sleeve around your palm, and carry it with the careful balance of someone transporting pain. Halfway up the stairs, your shoulder burns. The heat bleeds through the cloth. You grit your teeth and keep going. In the chamber, the masseuse nods toward the pedestal. You unload the bowl, rearrange the stones on the metal plate, and step back. One of the clients, young, muscled, smug. You're the one who cleans the pots, aren't you? You pause. Yes, Dominus. He leans toward his friend. Imagine touching that with your hands. You'd never stop smelling it. They laugh. You don't. You return to the fire chamber and soak your hands in a barrel of cooled ash water. It sizzles slightly. You hold them there, letting the pain rise and pass. You hum. Again. Not because you're happy, but because humming is the only sound you control in this entire bath. Later, during a lull, you wander past the garden wall where the discarded pots dry in the sun. There's a row of them. Mismatched, cracked, stained. Some won't survive another week. You tap one with your nail. It rings dull. Too much lime in the mix. Someone will squat over it tonight anyway. You sit beside the wall and close your eyes for a moment. The heat wraps around you. Not from anger. Just from being alive. You think of the fire pit, the glowing coals, the way the flames bend like dancers when you feed them the right kind of wood. You think of how the chamber pots reflect moonlight when no one else around, catching the night like tiny, ugly mirrors. And you wonder if that's what you are, too, a mirror not of beauty, but of what people leave behind. You return inside and see Porcius, the old soap boiler, scrubbing a pot himself. A rare sight. Caught the crack before it spread. You taught them well. You nod. They'll forget again next week. He snorts. That's what we're here for, to remember the things everyone else forgets. He gestures toward the path. This is the real Rome. You stare at it. Brown, chipped, clean. Porcius wipes his hands and continues down the corridor. You're left alone with the pot. You reach out, turn it slightly, and for the first time, you see it for what it is. Not just waste, but proof. Proof that people come here as they are, full of need and filth and sweat and hunger, and walk out smelling like rosewater and status. Because of you, and because of the fire, you return to the furnace one last time before nightfall. It's quiet now. The flames are low, resting. You sit beside them, watching the orange light ripple across the blackened walls. You remove your sandals, let the stone warm your feet. No one comes looking. No one asks where you are. You are invisible, and you are everywhere. The fire hums. You hum back. Not a song. A memory. Of shame. Of something that looks a lot like pride. If you squint hard enough in the dark. You never planned to be a caretaker of fire and filth. No one does. No child dreams of chamber pots. No young man romanticizes the sting of smoke behind his eyes. You fall into it. Or, more truthfully, you're pushed by poverty, by accident, by the silence between what you wanted and what was left. And once you're in, you don't climb up. You burn in place. Tonight, you're burning slower than usual. The bathhouse is closed. Doors bolted. Lamps extinguished one by one. Even the perfumed steam that clung to your skin all day has cooled into a dull residue. But the heat beneath the marble hasn't stopped. Not completely. The fire never fully dies. You're here to make sure of it. You sit alone in the lowest furnace chamber, where the bathhouse breathes from the belly. The coals crack and shift, sounding almost like bones, settling. You prod one gently, not to feed it, just to feel that it's still alive. The others are asleep. Tibitus is curled beside the folded linen shelf, mouth open, dreaming of girls or grapes or gods. Porcius is probably snoring into his robe again, a faint puff of lavender still rising from his beard. Even the overseer is gone, and headed back to his house with clean hands and a full stomach. But not you. You're here, where the work lingers even after the day forgets it. You rest your chin on your knees and watch the glow reflect in the blackened walls. It's beautiful, in a way. Not like a festival or a mosaic or a senator's robe, but raw, honest. Fire doesn't lie. It just exists. Hungry. Hot. You know that feeling. Hours pass. You wake briefly when a rat skitters by the water bearer. You don't bother chasing it. You've learned to coexist with things that survive in the dark. There's a pot leaning near the fire grate, an old one, broken at the rim. You should have thrown it out last week. You didn't, maybe because it feels like a monument now. A reminder. You pick it up, turn it in your hands. The clay is warm from the fire. You can still smell vinegar and age and something else. Time, maybe. You carry it outside, past the storeroom, and place it gently beside the broken tiles near the rear wall. You don't smash it. You just let it sit. Not trash. Not sacred. Just there. Like you. The wind outside carries a chill. You step back in and close the door behind you. And then you hear it. The faintest sound. A cough. Not yours. You pause, listening. Another cough. Sharp. Controlled. You move slowly toward the corridor near the tap. A shape is there, hunched against the wall. Small. Barefoot. A boy. No older than 10. Not one of yours. Mastaff. He sees you and freezes. Oh, sissy starts. You hold up a hand. You're not in trouble. He stares uncertain. You know, what are you doing here? He shrugs. I wanted to see how it worked. The bath. He nods. The fire. You smile. Most don't care. I do, he says, suddenly bold. My uncle says the bathhouse is the heart of Rome. He's wrong, you say. It's the stomach. He grins. You offer your hand. Come, I'll show you. Back in the furnace room, the boy sits cross-legged, watching as you stoke the coals. He's quiet, curious. Good qualities. You tell him about the different woods. Olive burns hot but quick. Pine smokes too much. Fig smells sweet. You show him how to shift the damper, how to listen for the change in the fire's breathing. He asks if it ever goes out. Not if we're doing it right, you say. He nods solemnly, like you've given him a secret. Before he leaves, he points to your hands. Do they hurt? All the time. He frowns. Why keep doing it? You pause. You think of the senator who never looked at you. The pot that cracked in your hands. The fire that singed your leg last month. And then you think of how the heat rises. How the walls stay warm. How people soak and breathe and believe the world still works. Because someone has to. You say. He nods again. He believes you. And for a moment, that's enough. He slips away before dawn. You never learn his name, but he saw the fire. He saw you. That's more than most. Later, as the bathhouse opens again, with its perfumes and poets and patronizing smiles, you carry a tray of coals to the caldarium. You pass a man who grimaces at the smell. You pass another who praises the warmth, like it's a gift from the gods. Neither sees the soot on your arms, or the cut across your thumb, or the memory you carry like an ember in your chest. That's all right. You're not here to be seen. You're here to keep the fire alive. And you do. One chamber pot at a time. One furnace breath at a time. One day longer than anyone expects. Because, underneath the marble and the myths, Rome runs on fire, and you are its quiet flame.